All right, we'll call Committee of the Whole to order. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with a motion to approve the minutes of our April 3rd meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. With that, we have a robust schedule for this evening. I do want to turn it over to my colleague, our Vice President, Sarah Keppel.
Thank you, President Litton. Before we begin, I just want to note that on our agenda for tonight, we do have a presentation from Lakewood Public Library. I earlier today consulted our law department. Since Lakewood Public Library is a client of my business, I will be staying out of courtesy to hear them present, but I will be recusing myself from any deliberations or discussion, including if at this meeting or the next when any sort of substantive matter comes before us regarding Lakewood Public Library. I'll be excusing myself and exiting, but for tonight, out of courtesy, I'll be staying to hear the presentation, but will remain silent.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that, Vice President Keppel. I will only add, and this was something I remember from probably 10 years ago with the CAC, that were we to vote on funding multiple organizations that would include the library, that it might be okay for you to vote as a slate, but if it were to be an individual vote, perhaps to also recuse yourself there. But we'll wait on that and consult the law department further as we go forward. But again, I appreciate that. And with that, starting a few minutes late with apologies, I'd like to turn it over to Lakewood Alive to be our first presenter this evening regarding ARPA funds through council. Not yet.
Not on. Now we're good, right? Hi, everyone. Ian Andrews from Lakewood Alive. Thank you very much for having us tonight. We appreciate the opportunity. I'm joined by my colleague, Allison Urbanek, our Housing and Internal Operations Director. We represent the senior leadership team at Lakewood Alive. I also want to recognize several of our board members who are here tonight in support of our efforts. We have a fantastic team behind us every day helping us out as volunteers. They believe in the work we're doing, and so we say to them, thank you for being here. With further ado, I will turn it over to Allison to lead us through this first one.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. A lot of the things that you will hear this evening are not new to you. We heard from several of you, shoot for the moon. So we are shooting for the moon. We will tell you about Lakewood Alive, our housing outreach program, and ways that these funds can help us really lift up our programming, shooting for the moon, and serve the Lakewood community in the best way possible. So the first presentation that we have tonight is for our Housing Outreach Support Grant. We break our funding down into about 4 different pots, and you'll see them here on the slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Ian to speak about the first request, the $50,000 to purchase a replacement vehicle.
Right, so as many of you know, and have hopefully seen, as we're out and about helping in the community, our friend here, Stan the Van, the 2005 Ford Econoline. This was donated to us several years ago, and prior to that we had an old SUV, and prior to that we were using our own personal vehicles. We are conducting anywhere from 30 to 50 volunteer projects a year, plus we're also running the big special events. We're moving a lot of equipment, a lot of infrastructure around town for various projects, large and small. And number one, it really wasn't fair that we were beating up our own personal cars and we needed a vehicle, but we were able to then work with a generous donor to help us acquire this van from a paint company as it was being retired. Well, we're now nearing the point where we will need to retire Stan as he is getting up in years and in miles. And so as we think about the future of the organization, we would like to be able to augment and then ultimately replace this 2005 Econoline with a new vehicle, and so we've asked for your consideration for $50,000 for the purchase of a vehicle, as well as tax, title, insurance, maintenance, and all the things that go along with owning a van. But it's pretty important. Not pretty. It's incredibly important to our ability to operate and function that we have this type of capacity to move things around. Thank you.
Okay, so the next tranche of funds that we requested is $20,000 for our Aging in Place program endowment. So as we know, the silver tsunami is here. The aging population in Lakewood is only increasing. And right now, we have about 8,000 senior citizen residents who are living in Lakewood. They're living in sundry different ways in single-family housing, in the Westerly, in apartments, or in doubles. I have seen a lot of residents who own a double, and for some reason, the most elder resident lives in the upper floor, and the most young, able-bodied folks live in the lower floor. I'm not sure why, but that's what we are seeing. We are seeing a wide range of housing options for our senior citizens, but the most common thing that we hear from them is, we are not leaving Lakewood. We love it here. I've raised my family here. I'm fourth generation Lakewood, many different things. And so what we would like to do is continue to offer them options to remain healthy and safe in their homes. We find that people are very proud and they rely on their independence. They're not willing to give it up. So we created the Aging in Place program back in 2015. Mark McNamara and myself are certified Aging in Place specialists. We will go out at no cost and do an Aging in Place assessment for residents, and then we will offer them a write-up. The write-up provides them with low-hanging fruit options to improve their quality of life. So that's installing grab bars. We have permanent grab bars for folks who want those. We have temporary grab bars for folks who are either in a rental situation and their landlord says, we don't want you to go into the tile in the bathroom. We have really great options for people that are not permanent but are very sturdy. We also have folks who need things like ramps, chair lifts, different things to help benefit them. The City of Lakewood has a really great program through the Department of Community Development that will offer owner-occupants chair lifts, stair lifts, ramps to get in their home at basically no cost. So that's a wonderful program. But we are finding that we are getting more people calling us, asking for assessments, and then they're telling us, this is all great and dandy, but we don't have a way to pay for these things. In an everyday way that Lakewood Alive would use these funds would be to install grab bars, purchase chairs that would be used in the shower, transfer chairs, safe showering chairs, handheld shower, just low-hanging fruit that would allow people to stay in their homes. We do get grant funding, but we are finding it harder and harder to pay for these things. Usually grant funding wants to pay for programmatic support. Create a new program, but it basically pays for the person to be there. They don't like to pay for items that get installed in people's homes. So these funds would allow us to continue this program and not worry about funding. We won't have to turn anyone away. We won't have to figure out if they can pay for something or if they have to contribute half of the cost. These funds would endow the program as well as help us to continue to pay for staff support to continue this really important program. And then the next tranche of funds is $15,000 for Knowing Your Home to build out our workshop. This also goes with our next funding request, which is the purchase of the youth building. We want to expand the garage, not really expand it, but build it out to ensure that we can provide more high-quality Knowing Your Home workshops, hands-on, teach people how to use hand tools, get comfortable with those tools to promote safety, but also to remove barriers of folks repairing their homes, improving them homes, and also getting them used to maintaining historic and aging housing stock. We did also include some additional funds in that $15,000 to help support the actual toolbox so that we can continue to purchase contractor-grade tools to continue to put more tools out into the community through our lending library. The lending library costs $30 annual membership for a family. If you are a landlord, it's $50. Or you can become a friend of the toolbox, this is a little PSA, for $100 and help us to support the program. The $30 gets you access to the tools. We ask folks to leave a deposit. When they return the tool in good working order, they get their deposit back. So it's really just a $30 annual cost. So the $15,000 would help to supplement that program. And then the last is $30,000 for staff support. Shoot for the moon, and I would not be a good nonprofit professional standing up here today if I did not ask for programmatic support. We need dollars to keep the lights on, the roof over our heads, and to keep people behind their desks. It's very important to Lakewood Alive. New this year, we are actually offering health care to our employees. You heard that right. We did not do that before. Yes, it's 2023. We are now offering health care benefits to Lakewood Alive employees. But we all know that costs are going up. So we're shooting for the moon, asking for additional programmatic support to help us continue to endow our programs, to be able to offer the wide cadre of items that we offer, and do it so that we can actually focus on our programs, focus on the people here in the community, focus on our quality of life events, instead of having to worry about how we're going to keep the lights on and pay the bills. Please let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to answer them.
Thank you for that. And just a point of order on timing and things like that. We did get started a little bit late. And so what I'd like to do, colleagues, is offer up questions to Lakewood Live on this portion of their presentation until about 6:25, and then that'll carry us into the next presentation. With that, I'll start with a question and then turn it over to my colleagues. As you know, I wear a rather large nonprofit hat myself, and understand the burdens of admin costs and things of that sort. But I'll ask you the question I get asked often as well, and that is how beyond beyond potential ARPA funding support for staff support, what would Lakewood Alive do once that funding runs out?
Sure. So that question is always asked. It's a really great question. If we had a magic 8-ball, we'd be able to give you a really great answer. But basically, we are constantly looking for revenue streams. So diversifying our funding options. The next presentation is one way that we'll be doing that, purchasing a building and creating a new home for Lakewood Alive. But also, we are always looking to optimize. So we would continue to build upon our events, continue to seek additional grant funding, and continue to find different economic ways that Lakewood Alive can generate additional funds.
Understood. Anything to add?
Just one thing to add, we also have been growing out a robust development program, being able to go to our donors and say, this is the work that we're doing in the community, and we need your support. And so we're not saying that we would be wholly reliant upon the city of Lakewood for the funding for housing outreach, but to say this is the impactful work, this is the meat and potatoes in the community that's helping to stabilize streets and homes, and the donors have been responding, and so we would make sure that we would continue not only do that, but ramp up those efforts.
Excellent. Colleagues, questions? Vice President Keppel.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for that great presentation and your work as always. I note in your application you list some other funding sources of projects. If my just quick look at math is correct, that's at least over 200,000, almost 300,000. Is that? Am I?
So the total budget of the housing outreach program, as we're saying, that's the project, is $386,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And you list those. Most of that funding is coming from other sources other than ARPA's, according to what
That's
I'm
correct.
seeing here. Okay.
That's correct. This
and-
is also what's projected as well, so that's looking ahead. Yeah, so adding in these additional funds.
Great, thank you. Including private grants, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then I just had a question. You mentioned about with the Aging in Place program about being able to install handrails. Would that, you would actually be installing them? Because that isn't something you do now, is that correct? You tell them that they can be installed, but so, and who would be installing them? Is that
So Lakewood Alive does currently install them. We install Knox boxes, which are the safety lock boxes on the exterior of the homes, as well as grab bars and handrails. We will also build and sit the shower chairs and the handheld shower heads for folks. We don't really like drilling into tile because if any of you have done that, you have to have x-ray vision and hope that you drill in the right place in their precious tile. So we try really hard to use a stander bar, which is the non-permanent bar that we talked about. It looks like a stripper pole. And it locks into place, and it holds Mark McNamara, so we know that it is tried and true.
Thank you.
Curious if that's the first time stripper pole is read into the record.
I use it often. If you were to collage my words, it comes up often. It's a good display, though, of how it actually works. People now visualize what it looks like.
Well done. Well done. Colleagues, any other questions on that note? Councilman Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Lakewood Alive board and staff and leadership. And it's always good to talk to you because, as you know, I'll just recap what I always say, that the two organizations that we're hearing from tonight two of them are among the most impactful partners, Lakewood Alive, just as you said, on the housing and on the downtown commerce. I think we get $10 in value for every $1 the city invests. And as a nonprofit counterpart, you're like the coach. You can work with a private property owner. The city's like the umpire. We can call balls and strikes and enforce the rules strictly, but we can't do some things. It is appropriate for a nonprofit support agency such as you to do those things. So it's very clear in my mind that you're a frontline partner to the city. Three, I want to ask a question about the vehicle. On the other things, count me as a supporter for aging in place. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer, right? We want Lakewood to be a home for all ages, and if you can help people stay successfully in their homes where they've been a while, that's got all kinds of advantages for cost, probably mental health, connectivity with their neighbors and their neighborhood. There may come a time when you have to move. My own parents are doing that, not in Lakewood, somewhere else. But the age in place, I think we should support it. And if it's a small but meaningful thing like the equipment for grab bars that for some reason can't be easily funded from some other source, I think the city should be doing that. Knowing your homes, also the same way. It's not that's going to also serve people of all ages, probably people in their early home ownership years especially. But if we can expand that, if we can make Lakewood collectively, the community, a academy of smart, thrifty home ownership, that's a good thing. So count me as a support for that. On staff support, colleagues, you may have recall that at the end of the budget season last year, I was looking for $19,000, a little less than that, in support for this item. So I'm committed to at least that, to give $19,000. I hope that maybe collectively we'll support the full $30,000. But if you recall, that was the difference in the amount available from the CDBG funds through the CAC process that wasn't available because of the fluctuations in the federal funding level. One question? Yes. For the vehicle, does it have to be a van? Can it be a pickup? I would like to, and in fairness, I think the two members of the administration will appreciate this. I'd like it to be electric if the city's going to support it.
Sure,
And
understood.
in fact, you guys could be a front line, because I tell the administration that all the time, so in fairness and consistency. You could be an ambassador for that kind of clean, successful use out in the community if we were to do that. Maybe one approach would be that the city could contemplate funding the delta, the differential cost, and we could work with you on matching funds for the rest. I don't know, just thinking out loud here. Does vehicle type matter to you?
Sure, we've certainly also discussed a truck as well as a van, and I think we would just need to investigate and see what the options are, what the pricing is, and what would be involved, but we're certainly, and then get a better understanding of maintenance, the longer-term ramifications, but we're more than happy to explore those things.
Thank you. Maintenance and fuel should be lower by a significant amount than a conventional vehicle. The total cost of ownership you gain over the life of operation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm good. My questions are kind of in the context of other proposals and this proposal. I'll hold it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I note some overlap there, and we'll get into all of that, of course. Just want to take a couple more minutes here with any other questions for Lakewood Live on this presentation, and I'm not seeing a lot. I do have one quick question regarding endowment. That's about the smallest endowment size I've ever heard of. Would it be an actual endowment? Would you invest in some certain way, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we don't really know how we will have to use these funds yet in terms of how they have to be spent and all of the rules and regulations that go along with these funds. As we learn those things, I think it would allow us to better understand. I use the term endowment as a way for us to continue to build funding resources. So if we show that City of Lakewood is giving us X dollars, we can use that to our advantage with other foundations and other organizations who would want to contribute to this fund. So it's basically helping us to generate additional revenue by matching grants potentially, and to help us while we try to find additional funding for these implements.
Thank you. And I note that there may be some constraints upon ARPA funds and uses in this matter, but I'm not absolutely certain, though some of the movements of those funds might free up them for this purpose.
Absolutely, and we will follow all the rules, but also we'll be looking forward to ways that we can maximize these dollars to be long-lasting.
Understood. One more question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Councilman Baker. Thank you.
Thank you. And appreciate this presentation, very well done. I don't have a ton of questions. The only one I do is, how much money per year do you typically spend on the aging in place? And like, are you turning people away, or are you serving every customer? And then about how much money out of your budget does it take?
So that's a great question. We are not turning people away, but we are not also very actively advertising this program. We were working with the Department of Human Services. They had some funds that allowed us to spend about $3,500 on low-hanging fruit, so $50 grab bars. That lasted us about 2 years because we were not really maximizing this program. But we hope to take this program to the next step, help people find like walk-in showers, help people potentially get really good-looking ramps instead of the not pretty ones that go in some people's yards because that's all they can afford. It will help us to take this program to another level. So, but we do not really advertise this program at all. It's all word of mouth, and friends tell friends tell friends. So, you know, currently we spend probably $3,500 to $5,000. That's not staff, that's just materials. And then this would allow us to really escalate this program. We are working with a neighborhood paramedic, Mike Sanders, who's a wonderful, wonderful resource, and we continue to get more referrals from him on a monthly basis. And then the fire department refers folks to us for the Knox boxes. A Knox box, I hope you're sitting down, hold your seats, $250 to put a metal box on the exterior of someone's home that they will probably, hopefully, never have to really use. Plus, $18 in shipping. And if you order two, it's not included in that $18. It's like $27 for shipping. So we do not pay tax as a nonprofit. But these things cost money. So a Knox box is $250. A Stander bar is $160. And generally, they live with that person forever. Once in a while, someone passes or no longer lives in their home, and a family member will call and say, hey, do you want to take this back? And we have no shame. We're a nonprofit. We will take it back, sanitize it, and throw it in someone else's house. But really, these things cost a lot of money, and this would allow us to really advertise the program as it should be.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to your second presentation, noting that, and just so everybody's aware, the times that we've allotted for each thing are based on the number of different requests and presentations that organizations have had to council, and are not reflective necessarily of our value placed on each presentation or anything along that line. I, in fact, personally value all of the organizations presenting this evening in equal measure. With that, your second presentation.
Great. Thank you very much. So we're thrilled to be able to speak with you about our vision, our proposal for the former Division of Youth building on Madison Avenue in Birdtown. It's a neighborhood in which we've been investing a lot of our time and energy really as far back as 2012, from shortly after when I arrived, and then working really closely. That began with Citizens Bank of installing bus shelters because we realized that nobody had any protected shelters to ride the bus to get to the Red Line in a neighborhood. 40% of the people didn't have access to a car. So let's give them some cover in the rain, for goodness sakes. And then take that, and then all the efforts of the housing outreach program in the community, working with a lot of refugees, a lot of seniors. And fast forward to today of this opportunity where we, as an organization that has been growing not just in size, but in programmatic capacity, the time is now. We have been working with a group of volunteers. Mike Bentley, our board president, has been a part of this team for quite some time now, looking at how Lakewood Alive could acquire a property as the next step in the organization, not just for our office, but also as a way to, as Allison indicated in the prior presentation, to potentially generate different revenue streams and either be revenue neutral or hopefully revenue positive, then further taking away our reliance on some of the special events that we host because we have to profit from those. So we're seeking to invest in this building in Birdtown, in a neighborhood that we've believed in for quite some time. If we are, and there's a dual process happening, and we all know this, where we've submitted an RFP to the city of Lakewood. It was due on the 4th, along with Trish and their team. And then we wait to hear what's going to happen. So there's kind of some timing issues here, and we fully recognize that and acknowledge that. But anyways, if we were to be selected ultimately, we would seek to move our offices. We'd renovate the building. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then be able to move into the first floor and be able to lease out one of the first floor spaces, lease out the second floor. We already have a company that has sent in their letter of interest as a potential tenant, along with some other organizations that have said they support what we're doing, to be a community gathering space. And I know people throw that around, but it truly would be a place where organizations like Friends of Madison Park, small business associations, there's some fun stuff happening right now on Madison Avenue, the East End's getting fired up. Organizations that don't have those meeting spaces, this is where they'd be able to come and meet. And so we're excited about those types of things that we would be able to bring to the building, and then more importantly, to bring to the neighborhood. As we think about some of the benefits, of course, this is the next step in the evolution of this organization. We have been below ground now for really since probably about 2008. Formerly at the INA building, and then moving across the street to get away from the sewage, and I don't say that to be funny, into Lakewood Center West, where we have been able to operate. And while we always said the rent's right and we can just kind of, work without windows, there also really is something there where you need to be able to provide a work environment where you're not only serving your clients, where they are able to find you, but where you also can retain your staff. And you can retain your team and grow that team and bring more people to your office, where you're able to get in front of people and get them there to believe in what you're doing, to support you, but also to take advantage of the services you provide. So we think that this would provide exceptional benefits to Lakewood Alive as an organization, moving into a high visibility space to potentially create that additional funding stream and to offer that space that is above ground to our team, but most importantly to serve the community, which leads to the community benefits of breathing new life into a historic building. Right now, we are, as you know, we are an organization that supports historic preservation. We would be in the heart of the Birdtown Historic District. We're also partnering with the City of Lakewood to go through the National Register nomination process of looking at Madison Avenue as a historic district from end to end. The city and Lakewood Alive hosted our friends from the State Historic Preservation Office about 2 weeks ago on a tour of Madison, and they gave us the initial thumbs up that, yes, you have something here, and we should go after it. So we're going to work with the city on that piece. We're excited about that. We also want to make sure that we are looking out for our future. We're in a building in which we're able to negotiate ahead of time that we would be able to stay there for at least another year or two. And while this isn't the reason to invest in 12900 Madison, our building recently sold and it's being converted to apartments. So we also want to make sure that we have a home for the organization that is long-lasting. Creating that hub for small businesses and community partners, as I indicated, we have grown this side of the program tremendously with our small business support program of helping folks gain access to the city's sign grant program, being able to connect them to one another through the various organizations, West End, Uptown, Downtown, and then the citywide group, and now, as I mentioned, the emerging East End. Removing these barriers to service, offering hands-on workshop space, and then bringing some of those additional office tenants to what is currently a vacant building. So we believe those are some of the kind of bullet point overarching benefits for the organization and the community.
Okay, so as you see in our request, Lakewood Alive has requested $200,000 to rehabilitate this currently vacant building. We did put a purchase price out there, and Lakewood Alive will be covering that cost ourselves. And then we look to support the purchase actually the rehabilitation of this building through ARPA funds. As you can see here, we have a basic drawing of what the building will hopefully look like. It's very similar to what's already there. We would just want to modernize it a little bit more. So the lower portion is the first floor. You'd have an entryway, a conference room, and a rentable office space. And then when you walk in, the purple part would be Lakewood Alive proper, a receptionist area, some cubicle workspaces, windows, and then some offices with doors. And then a break and kitchenette area, which would allow for some communal workspaces and really fun environments, and I think our folks would really like that. And then you see the wonderful garage space that we hope to turn into a hands-on workshop space for knowing your home, as well as the toolbox. And then on the second floor, that's in the upper left in the green, would be our leasable space. We have the opportunity to either lease these as small offices, so individual office spaces where we would charge a lease rent space cost, and then, or someone could come in and rent the entire space themselves. There is a kitchenette, so that makes it homey and inviting. And then there is some space in the basement for storage. So we think that this is the best use of the space, the most cost-effective use of the space, because we are not really changing the footprint of the building at all. So we believe that this is something that Lakewood Alive, with our current size and our current abilities, would be able to manage ourselves, and it would be self-sustaining. Here's our list of proposed interior renovations. Waterproofing, replacing the driveway. It's currently pointing towards the building and dumping water in the basement. And just other different improvements, again, that we think are kind of low-hanging fruit, accessible things to help us make this building more useful for Lakewood Alive, more modern and accessible for our future tenants and Lakewood Alive. Okay, so that's the end of our presentation. We'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I will turn questions over to my colleagues here in a moment. I want to acknowledge that we, of course, have two entities seeking the same space, or at least, at the very least, acknowledging that both need new space or would hope to have new space in the near future. We will see how this all plays out as we discuss. Want to let my colleagues ask questions, but I also want to give, perhaps between the two presentations, Director Leininger an opportunity to just update us on this space from the city's perspective so we all understand it, and then not make any decisions here this evening on picking a winner or whatever, however you want to look at it as we go forward. But colleagues, any questions?
Just one quick question,
Councilman Rader.
specifically towards the amount, and thank you, well done. Would expect no less. You guys do phenomenal work. 200,000, that's what you're asking for. You give a great list of things. Is that full cost of renovation? Is that partial cost of renovation? How does it kind of fit into the full mix of what you would potentially try to do with this building should you be successful in that proposal?
Sure. So this is for the full cost of renovation. If we are able to utilize ARPA funding, this would allow Lakewood Alive to have no mortgage on this property. So it would allow us to go in with no debt and to help us to maximize this investment, as well as the revenue generation possibilities. So the $200,000 would encompass a contingency cost, as well as current costs. We had a contractor and an architect, several architects walk through and help us price these repairs. So the $200,000, again, would allow us to move ahead with no mortgage on the property.
It's helpful, thank you.
And with that, does that, do you allow room for the possibility of not getting fully funded and thus being able to go forward with a sizable down payment, but also a tiny mortgage as well?
So we have partnered with IFF, which is a lending institution that partners with nonprofits, CDCs, and we have same plan, $200,000 that we would borrow from them. They require a 5% down payment. So we would use our purchase price that, again, Lakewood Alive is paying out of their reserves, plus the 5%, and then take on a mortgage for the remaining cost. These things that we have listed are pretty much essential. It'd be new HVAC, roofing, waterproofing, things, it's really there's not a ton of fluff built in here. It's stuff that will help us move in again and make it something that we don't have to worry about in the near future to again allow us to be as successful as possible as new landlords, new building owners. It's digestible, but we do believe that these things are pretty essential.
And it would seem to me that it's possible that with tenants involved, that any potential future mortgage could be largely paid on a monthly basis by the tenant revenue.
Yeah, and that's what we looked at with our pro forma, where we were able to run the numbers, to look at the rents that we believe we can receive. And so having this Plan B, or if you have kind of imagination of the two, to be able to make it pencil, and that the debt service would be something that would be manageable.
And I'll ask these same questions of LCSC, of course, just for future reference. Okay. Any other questions for my colleagues? Councilman Schachtner.
Thank you. You folks did touch on this, of course, in your presentation, but I'm just curious of how really you do envision this space as supporting or augmenting your work and providing services to residents.
So I think the number one thing is visibility. People will know where to find Lakewood Alive. If you go into Lakewood Center West, you have to walk in a very long hallway, look at a board that's from 1982. Lakewood Alive is about this big. And then you have to get in the elevator, which is B for basement, but some is LL for lower level, but B for basement. And then you will find us in a dark basement. So being on a street level, I think number one, small businesses, residents will be able to find us on their own. They might want to pop in and say, what does Lakewood Alive do? But the fact that we will have street-facing visibility will be huge for people to finding us on an everyday basis. Also parking, Madison Park is right there. It's very convenient. It's free parking. People can come and see us all the time and not worry about the cost of feeding meters. I do think that also we will be more of a destination, a community space. Right now, people don't really want to come down into the basement and sit with us in our very nice conference room. It's beautiful. But you know, it doesn't come to mind. But we will have a conference space that Friends of Madison Park will come and use. We intend to invite legal aid to come and visit us. Also the Small Business Development Center, you know, having drop-in sites for folks. It's easily accessible and people will want to come and see us. So it'll allow us to expand the services that we currently offer. Not that we don't have the space to do it currently, but it will be something that is desirable. People will want to seek us out and come and ask questions, find out more about what we do. So we truly think that it will be desirable space and something that will encourage people to walk in the doors and visit us. Don't know if you have anything to add.
You colleagues, anything else? Councilman Bullock?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good conversation. A couple thoughts in no particular order. Lakewood Alive, so I agree with the goal here. Number one, the space. Number two, the effectiveness of your mission. And number three, the financial asset development and strengthening of your balance sheet over time. Essentially, what we're talking about is trying to help Lakewood Alive get an asset that will be part of their endowment, their broader endowment, to the chairman's question or comment earlier. So whether it's this or another building, I'm interested. Count me as a supporter. I don't know how that works, what level. Leads me to my next thought. We're talking here appropriately about ARPA fund decisions and commitments near term. I applaud the council leadership's invitation to City Council that we reserve another $1 million for next year, and we have time to be deliberative. We can also, though, consider other city funds, okay, whether the general fund or property acquisition fund or other funds. And Director Rancourt is not here tonight, so I don't cause him any agita. But if in our discussion here it turns out that we find one or more community partners that are worth supporting as long-term partnerships, and it makes sense to me, I would be open to and welcome that broader conversation. So maybe we do some decisions now as a start that continues or gets some funding by our end-of-year normal budget process. So just a possibility. Lakewood Alive, quickly on this, blade sign, really cool. That's better than the 1982 little plastic lettering, although we all enjoy 1980s nostalgia TV shows, and that's the vision of that. On your HVAC, at the risk of being a one-note Johnny, if you were to get a very high efficiency version of that, number one, there could be grant funds that nonprofits are, or actually federal tax credits that nonprofits are now eligible for. They were not 12 months ago, but they are today. Number two, it should lower your own operating costs and that of your tenants, your prospective tenants. And number three, again, you could model the best practice to the community. That gets a lot less attention than cool new stuff like solar panels, but in some ways is the thing you should do 8 times out of 10 first, is to get efficiency and then think of fancy new stuff. So plant a seed for now, but I personally would be recommending that and interested in having that be a part of the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Bullock. And let me also say that as we start looking into more working with landlords and learning about the things that they're doing very well, as we start to think about what are the best practices for some folks who maybe are not doing things quite so well with their tenants, one of those is looking at green leasing. And the leader in the whole region is Branch Smith at Detroit Warren. So we would certainly want to better understand what he's done to be able to support his tenants. There's a reason why he's 100% occupied all the time, and he's been efficient with his investments.
No, I want to note just on time, we started about 7 minutes late, so we're giving 7 minutes forward on this, just to be fair to everyone. Vice President Keppel, that gives you the final word here. Final question.
Thank you. This is very quick. In the previous, the housing part, we talked about the, includes $15,000 for the garage build out. So this $200,000 would not, would it touch the garage, or is that $15,000 is separate out for that?
Yeah, so great question. The $15,000 is not included in the $200,000. The $200,000 is really just to rehab the building itself, not build out. There is some, tuck pointing that might need to be done in that back cinder block garage, but that is not included. The build out for knowing your home and the hands-on workshops is not included in $200,000.
I'm just going to repeat back to you to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So that would be doing base level repairs, touch-ups, but the $15,000 would allow you to hold programming there, really make it like a workshop-y, usable space.
Correct. Lighting, tables, things, nice big screens like this, things that would allow for the best possible hands-on workshops you've ever seen.
Thank you. And with that, I'll close things up on this one, if that's okay with my colleagues.
Mr. If you could indulge me really quickly, because I'm going to ask the same question to our leader.
Sure.
Because it's something that's not necessarily within council's control. If you don't get this building, do you have other plans that could be, that $200,000 could be used on?
If we were not able to, if we do not acquire this building, then we would look for other opportunities in town. Now, the commercial inventory right now is incredibly low. There's next to nothing that is for sale. And while we looked at another space, the lack of, the financial gap was too significant for us to feel that we'd be able to close that gap. But we would want to then start working on acquiring a different space.
Thank you. With that, I want to take a couple minutes, Director Leininger, for you to just update on this space, thanking Lakewood Alive for their time and presentation. I'm just trying to keep the trains rolling here, and that does not take away from the value of your presentation in any way. Thank you very much.
you.
Director Leininger.
Good evening, Council President Litton, members of council. So as was alluded to previously as part of this conversation, you'll hear about in the next presentation from LCSC. As you know, the city had 2 buildings that became available as a result of the completion of the construction at Cove Church. We consolidated human services into that building. We're talking about the Loeffler Center and the Youth Division building. Both buildings, we had originally submitted an RFP process for each of those. In the Loeffler building, we received 4 responses, of which we selected a person to move forward. And I'm going to put a pin in that one. I'll come back to that one here in a second. For the youth division, we only received one proposal, and we politely decided to go a different direction. While we were working on that other direction, we became aware of what you're going to hear about from LCSC, some issues that they had in their building over the holidays. And so we started an RFP process with them, and along the way, Lakewood Alive also showed an interest. Those RFPs were due on April 4th. We received both of them. They're very thorough and complete. Earlier today, we're taking a little bit process from what we established for the original RFP, simply because both boards are asking for funds from City Council. We had previously involved the ward representatives in that RFP process. Recognizing this process is going on and keep everybody kind of separated, myself included, because I'm an ex officio member of the Lakewood Alive Board. We have set an internal committee to review those RFPs. There's 5 members that are on that committee. They'll review them this week, and they will provide a recommendation probably early mid next week is what we anticipate. So I should have a recommendation to City Council here very soon. As far as the Loeffler building, I did unfortunately receive word. We awarded the original proposal to Maureen Koopman from CoLab. Very worthy proposal. Unfortunately, as they got deeper into their proposal process and we're working on a purchase agreement with the city, she decided that it simply was just too much of a project for what they were looking to take on at this point in time. So that building is now available as well. I have shared that with both organizations that you're going to hear from this evening, that building is available. In one case, I don't want to speak for Ms. Rooney, but in that case, that building, for a couple of different reasons, just simply doesn't work for them. Its locations and its functionality for their purpose. I have not heard a response yet from Lakewood Alive. So, but that building is now in play as well and could be a potential tool in solving this riddle we're trying to solve this evening.
Thank you for that update. I appreciate it. And with that, noting that we are roughly 11 minutes behind, maybe we'll borrow a little from our brief dinner. Director Rooney, if you'd come on up for your presentation.
Thanks. I'll go fast so I don't eat into your eating time.
I think we're both used to eating
So,
fast and
this
delaying
is
our meals. Go ahead.
difficult for all of us. It's uncomfortable for myself and for Ian, and it's probably uncomfortable for you, but that's the way it falls. But let me talk a little bit about what we've got going on. We moved to this facility in 2009. The original landlord took very good care of it. He passed away. It went to his trust, and things began to go down. At that point in time, we've limped along because it's a good location for us in terms of functionality. We can have our office space there as well as the pantry. But as time has gone on, it's become more and more difficult. We have consistently offered to buy the building from the current owner. She refuses to sell, and she has absolutely refused now to sell. She is not going to sell this building. It's not an opportunity for us. So it looks great from the outside, but I'd like to have you come inside. So she does do repairs when we ask, but they're never really complete repairs. They're temporary fixes. You never know when something else is going to go wrong. You probably don't know, but we have 4 apartments above us, and the leaking through the ceiling comes from plumbing issues, HVAC issues upstairs, so it's pretty continual. You're never really sure when you come in what you're going to find on the floor that should be on the ceiling. This is what we walked into the day after Christmas. This was an apartment above the western side of our building, had been vacant for 4.5 years. There's no property management, so no one had even been in that unit for 4 years. And much to the surprise of the landlord, batteries don't last forever. And the whole cause of the pipes bursting and freezing was 2 AA batteries in the thermostat. So we popped the AA batteries in, the heat kicked back on, but this is what we were left with. They're still working on it now. It's significant damage all the way from Madison to the parking lot. And then unfortunately, the tile floors were asbestos, so we had to have abatement done. So we're still living in 2/3 of the building, not even 2/3, because I'll show you what the middle section looks like. This is my office. That is the bathroom of the apartment above that came down. And outside of that is the hallway. And what was discovered when the contractor came in is that picture to your right. The hole in the tin ceiling goes right up to the apartment above, which is a significant fire hazard. And then we've discovered 2 more of those since. So the building department came in and did a walkthrough and issued correction notices to the landlord. The picture on the left is our lobby. Ray, who's one of our staff who's here, called me and said he came in the morning and that tile was down again. This time it came down on a table of donated food, 6-foot table of donated food that came in during the pandemic, all of which had to be tossed out. That has happened. The ceiling in the lobby has probably come down, I got to say 6 times since we've been there. And the picture on the right is the hallway, the ingress and egress from the parking lot. And that is from exterior damage to the building. That water runs through consistently. Every winter that ceiling comes down. The pantry ceiling leaks, and we've been fortunate that we've been able to move the pallets of food around to avoid those leaks. That's not going to happen forever, and our fear is that that water's going to come in. If it hits the food, we'll have to report it to the health department, and that's going to cause significant issues for us. So that's the state of the building. It's not so much we want to move, we have to move. We can't do business here. Again, referencing Ray, he said to me the other day, it's interesting, we call ourselves a community center, and nobody can come in. So that's really the situation we're in right now. But I think we shouldn't just focus on the building. I think we ought to talk about what happens in that building. We have 93% of the people that come into us are at or below 30% area median income, and you all know that that's $27,500 a year for a family of 4. So they come for food, for housing, for mental health services, case management, and all the other referrals. And again, it's the most vulnerable people in the community who need our help. So I don't want to focus just on the building. I think we have to talk about the value that Lakewood Community Services Center has to the community. I included this article with the ARPA application. I know that Councilman Baker read it because he commented back to me. Councilman Baker and Councilman Bullock both came and toured the facility, which we appreciate. But I think this is a really great graphic that shows that nonprofits tend to be so budget conscious that we forget about the environment that we're in. And I would say that we are probably we were at basic function, moving toward high function. And I think that the important thing is that we forget that the clients that we serve are seriously impacted by the state of the facility they come into. You treat people poorly, and it has a really detrimental impact on them personally and on the services we provide. And quite frankly, no one should come in our building right now. I don't feel good that the staff is there. I'm lucky I can work from home. Ken and Ray have to be there every day, and it's not a good environment for them, and it's a really bad environment for the clients. So the high interior beauty and inspiration sounds all lofty, but it really is about the clients. And I think as Ian was talking about before, community inspiration is kind of the nexus for both of our organizations. We really want to be a valuable part of the community. We want to add value to where we're located. So we have that very much in common. But I think that keeping this in mind is really important, not just at this moment in time, but I think it's important all the time for nonprofits. Our picture's very different financially. We estimated when I did the ARPA application that it would be $750,000. We said $250,000 for the property and $500,000 for the renovation. Our financing would be different. We're working directly with First Federal. They have offered to roll the cost of the building and the cost of the renovation together at 6% over 10 years. We have a significant endowment that adds to our financial capacity. So we would be looking at taking out a mortgage. We've lowered, in the RFP, we've lowered the cost of the building, our offer for the building to $700 to $200. So our total is $700,000 now. We have an estimate for from Frank Scalish for the renovation, and it came in close, almost at $500,000. He did not know that was the number I was talking about before he did the estimate, but there's significant work for us. We have a pretty much more significant renovation. We talked about, this is the basement, and we talked about renovating the garage on the upstairs too, and maybe building out and making that a place for the pantry. But parking is so terrible in that particular part of Madison Avenue that businesses would have an influx of traffic that really would be detrimental to their business. The school, Padre Pio's right down the street, Baracco right next door. So we also have, it's not a box truck that comes from the food bank, it's a semi. And we did that before. Once upon a time, we did that when we were on Marlowe. And the number of people we're serving now, it's impossible to use it. We've left this basement empty, but there is the potential. The mechanicals are good enough in the basement that we could put a walk-in cooler, some freezers and refrigerators in the basement. So we could provide food service at this location, not drive up, not walk in, for clients who come in for case management, mental health services, and any meeting with a social worker. We could allow them to take food from the basement. We haven't included that in the costs right now, because that's a future. First floor, as Allison said, is in pretty good shape for what we want to do. We would use a conference room in the front. We would have space for our mental health partners there to the left of the entrance, open space that could be used as open or converted if we added staff, 3 offices along the wall. We have significant need for locked storage because of our government contracts. We have to keep those documents for 7 years, and they have to be in a locked space, so we need that. The other thing that we would have to do on the basement is put in an ADA-compatible bathroom. We're lucky this has a ramp off the driveway that has wheelchair access, but we have to have an ADA-compatible bathroom. So that's a significant expense on the ground floor. And it really gets interesting when you go upstairs. This right now is it's an odd setup. It's a kitchen and I guess was a 4-bedroom apartment. I'm not sure what it was. But we had the drawings done, so we turned this from a 4-bedroom apartment into 2 single units. And that would allow us to either keep the shelter, if we wanted to keep the shelter. We're having discussions, and I'm sure I've told you this before, that the shelter's becoming difficult because it's harder and harder for us to move people out and keep them in Lakewood. So that is something that's up for discussion right now. But this could be one of the 1 bedrooms could be the shelter, and the second one would be a revenue generating apartment. So that's what our financials and our renovation looks like. The nice thing is, when you come to pay for us paying the mortgage, we're paying $3,500 a month right now for our space, and we have been since we moved in. So that would be rent we would no longer have to pay, and we could put that toward the mortgage. So the math works out. We've done it over 10 years, and then we'd refinance at the end of 10 years. And I don't want to get too far into the RFP because it's a whole different story, but you'll see, anybody who sees the RFP will see the pro forma taken out over a 10-year period of time. And the one last thing in this article I referenced, I'm not going to talk about the tear in the guy's eye, but this quote at the end I think is really significant for those of us who do human services. When I had to go to the old location, it reminded me that I was poor. When I come here for a moment, I get to feel like everybody else. I don't think you can overstate that. That's been our goal from the get-go. When we moved into this building, we had a moratorium, no wall posters that say, you can get food stamps, you can get Medicaid. People don't need to be reminded that they are low income. So I think this is really an important piece of this. We want a place where people don't feel poor, don't feel like we don't care about them, and that this is good enough for them. And I've been lucky. I've spent a lot of time at Cove since November. We're doing a program, a senior program funded by Three Arches at Cove Community Center. And I've talked to so many people, and Chad has, echoed it, of course. So many of the people come in there say they'd never wanted to go to the Lothar Center. They just never liked the feel there, but this Cove makes them feel good, makes them feel positive, makes them feel happy. And I think that if you're in this business, you just can't overstate that. And it's drawing a lot of people to Cove that probably never would have taken advantage of the city services. So that's really where we stand. That's our goal. That's what we want to be. And I don't know, I have two board members here, John Corlett. Oh, hi, Karen. I have three board members here. This is Dan Cohen. Dan is our board chair. Dan is vice president of strategy for, I'm getting a dry mouth.
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai Health Foundation. And John Corlett, is CEO of Center for Community Solutions. Karen Cook in the back is our vice chair, and she is with Institute for Hope at Metro. So Dan, I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, I'd love to just say one thing. I know that we're short on time here. I am humbled to be here. I'm humbled to hear Trish talk about this. I've now been in philanthropy for the better part of a decade, over 8 years, and I'm proud of Lakewood Community Services Center, and I can say that they are among the highest performing agencies I've ever seen in my career. I also speak as having served as co-director of the COVID-19 Rapid Response Fund, the collaborative of 80-plus foundations who together allocated more than $20 million to nearly 700 agencies over the past 2 years. And Lakewood Community Services Center stands out among the rest as tripling its service lines, providing emergency food at its height to almost 4,000 people, 3,600 people. At the drop of a dime, when everyone else closed their doors, Lakewood Community Services Center not only opened their doors widely, but tripled their service lines. And the last thing that I'll say, as board chair, as a funder, but also as a Lakewood resident, that I really believe that any budget is a moral document, and any decision that we make, we make, about how we allocate resources is a reflection of our values. And that's why I dedicate my time on Monday nights and many other nights to ensuring that we treat people who are at the margins with dignity and respect. And I think that's what's represented in this request. And I'd love just 30 seconds for John to talk a little bit about ARPA and this alignment with ARPA regulations.
Good evening, everybody. It's a privilege to be here tonight. My name's John Corlett. I live on Wager in Lakewood, a proud Lakewood resident. Well, I actually want to, before I mention that, we had the privilege of working with the city of Lakewood on your Lakewood Community Health Needs Assessment, which I have to say is one of the best health needs assessments I've ever seen, and the only one I've seen in Cuyahoga County.
Lakewood excellent.
So kudos for that. But I mean, I think the needs that we sort of surfaced in that process can be addressed in part by investing in this facility. And, I mean, the unfortunate thing is we're in the middle right now of, people seeing their benefits reduced. Every recipient in Lakewood who receives SNAP benefits, they went down. And there are proposals from our friends in Columbus that would make that worse and put more pressure on those families and those individuals. So I think it's really essential to have a place like this that is well supported and safe and secure And then I think, and if we look at some of the challenges that lie ahead and just what's happening with the demographics around poverty, particularly around senior poverty, I'm glad to see the focus tonight on older adults, because that's an area where that's the fastest growing poverty in our community in Lakewood and in Cuyahoga County and the city of Cleveland is among older adults. And I think this program plays an important part for that community as well. So I'll stop there and thank you for the ability to speak.
Thank you.
Thank
Do you want us up here still? Do you want
If,
No, I want to find out if there's probably going to be questions.
yeah, I'd like some, maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes for questions. Just quickly make sure they're succinct and to the point, if you don't mind, colleagues, just so we can keep with the time. Councilman Rader.
I'll kick it off, and thank you, Trish. The work you do is absolutely essential to what we do as a city and who we are as a city. So to keep it brief, same sort of question I had for Lakewood Alive. How does this 250 fit in? I heard you mention your proposal went from 750 to 700 for the full property and the renovations. Just want to make sure.
We put it down to 700,000 for the RFP, Tristan.
So then this is, and then that you're still imagining 500,000 in renovations, and this would cover half of that, 50% of the renovations, and it would allow you to borrow less, thus reducing your monthly payment by X, and that's going to save you money and allow you to do more great work that you do. So that all makes sense in my head. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilwoman Marks.
Thanks, Trish. I know you do phenomenal work. Question I have is, how could the city of Lakewood allow you to work in those conditions in the building that you're in currently? Have you contacted them about the disrepair of the building?
Yeah, when, as I said before, when we would call the landlord and say, this happened, she would fix it. She was good about it. She did it. Unfortunately, she didn't do it with any longevity in mind. We were between a rock and a very hard place at this facility. I was not in a position to say, if you don't do this, we're leaving. That, because then what? When she, if she called our bluff, it would be, well, I was just kidding, we're not leaving because we have no place to go. But when this happened at Christmas time, the building department came in, they came to look at the space that the independent contractor was working on. And when they were there, they made the decision to do a full tour of the entire space, which they did. And I think that ended up with a 3-page corrections notice that was served to the landlord, and she's starting to do those repairs. But some of them are not going to get done in the short term. There's exterior work that's not going to get done. And she's already told me that she does not have the money to repair the roof over the pantry. So the building department's been fine. It's just that we're at a point now where we just can't continue staying there. There's just too many things going on.
I understand, but you're not currently working in a condition like the photos you showed us.
Say again?
You're currently not working in a condition like the photos you showed us, where the ceilings have fallen down. They are down?
That's exactly what we're
That's what it looks like right now?
right this very now.
Well, I would have a question for the building department and how they could allow that.
He's been out, he's issued her.
I know, but it hasn't been corrected, and if you're working in that condition, I find that that's really inexcusable.
I would absolutely not put the blame on the building department. They've been there, they've evaluated it, they've seen the condition of it. Tomorrow they're going upstairs to look at all the apartments.
Well, and I mean, and I'm not putting the blame on them. I just think that if it's happening to a service like yours that offers a great deal to the community, and you're still working under those conditions, what happens to other buildings? You know,
I don't think it's a question for me, really.
No, I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that I feel terrible that you've had to work under those conditions. That's all I'm saying.
It's difficult. It's
Yes.
very difficult.
I'm
And
sure
we've
it
just
is.
reached the point where we know she's not going to put the money in to do what she needs to do. If we could have bought it, we would have invested the money in it
Sure.
and put it right, but she's not going to sell it, so we have to go.
And another question I have for you, if I may. You said that you have a good endowment.
We do.
What is your endowment?
$950,000.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you. The work you do, it's well-deserved. for
But we
sure.
don't want to touch it. Nobody does.
No, I understand. And could you tell me what the percentage of Lakewood residents you serve? You know what your percentage is?
Right now, well, We've just increased our food service by, the first quarter of this year, it's gone up by 22%. And that, we don't believe that that indicates the impact that the cut in food stamps is going to be. So right now, we're serving, last month, we served 2,700 individuals.
From Lakewood? And how many other communities do you serve?
A very small piece of Rocky River and Westlake. And that comes from our funding from the Hunger Network of Greater Cleveland. They carved out this territory years ago. So obviously the need is nowhere near as great in Rocky River and in Westlake.
And so it's just those three communities, Rocky River, Westlake, and Lakewood?
Uh-huh.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I
Sure.
appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you.
There's never enough time or money, for sure, for the services that you need to offer. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other quick questions? 1 minute each, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same question I had to Lakewood Alive, which is, if you don't get this building, what are your plans?
To start, we're going to have to start looking again. We're really, I mean, we've been looking, I think I told you that we have had, CBRE has been, pro bono has been looking for a space for us in Lakewood for about 3.5 years. Because, you know, having the office space and the pantry together is ideal, but they've come up with, you know, Berea Road, the wrong side of West 117th, all those options that we all know about. So we would have to begin again and look for space.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock?
Mr. Chair, 30 seconds. Thank you, Executive Director Rooney. I want to acknowledge your board is chock full of impressive leaders. John Corlett, we know and respect. Dan Cohn, I want to remind colleagues that served on the one or more of the chartering committees for our Healthy Lakewood Foundation, did really superb work. So thank you for continued service here. Karen Cook, I haven't had a chance to work with you as much, but look forward to that. I think, you know, I'll just say it for the record, I think we got to figure it out to help both LCSC and Lakewood Alive find success. However, we can do that because the work is palpably excellent and, of course, very, very important. And we're not going to be successful as an affordable community without their services. So good to also get a good housekeeping seal of approval for your performance from your board president. Thanks.
Thanks.
Councilman Shackner.
Thank you. And I'll
29 seconds.
All right, and I'll use 4 more of those seconds to thank Ms. Rooney and the board and the staff. A very important service that you provide our most vulnerable residents. And I'll use the other 20 seconds more directed towards to anybody listening, Mr. Storey happens to be in the room, that I have little patience for landlords, and especially, and even less patience for commercial landlords that use the excuse of, oh, I can't afford to fix this. Well, you have 2 choices if you want to be a landlord in the city. You could pay and fix it, or 3 choices. You pay and fix it, you could sell your business, not be a landlord anymore, or you could go to jail. Because that is one of the options that we could use through our prosecution of these type of acts. So that's not an excuse to me, I can't afford it. You can't afford being a landlord, sell your building.
Thank you. And Director Rooney, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks.
Appreciate you being here, and your board and other constituents who've come in support.
Thanks. Nice
Much
to see
appreciated.
you.
And just to make my own observation separate from that time, you know, I think we have an abundance of riches here in Lakewood. In terms of 2 peak performing organizations in our city that provide great value to our city's residents and beyond. That we have the American Rescue Plan Act and this opportunity to look at things in a new way, and that we have vacant city-controlled buildings that are available. It's a good problem to have overall, and I'm sure that we will find a way to get through it together. And with that, we will turn it to the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce for their presentation. And welcome.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Most certainly.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Small, and I'm the Executive Director at the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce. I've been in the role for about 9 months now, when Patty Ryan, who had been there a long time, retired. So for those of you who I've not met, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. So just wanted to kind of take you guys through a little bit. I know everybody's familiar with the Lakewood Chamber. However, just wanted to give a quick snapshot of who we are and what we do. We've been serving the greater Lakewood community for over 100 years. The Chamber came about in 1911, and I think that's some awesome longevity. The Lakewood Chamber is the leading membership organization for advocacy and for advancement of business interests in the Lakewood community. We're a membership organization, so we get a lot of our revenue, or the main chunk of our revenue, from membership dues that organizations join the chamber. So we have, like, give and take, like ebb and flow, about 350 members at any one time. And they join for different reasons, and they drop off for different reasons. But about 33% of the businesses in Lakewood are chamber members. So we reach around 15,000 employees, like 40% of employees in Lakewood. And then also we are a NOAC member. NOAC, for those of you who don't know, is Northern Ohio Area's Chamber of Commerce. So it's like an umbrella group that are, it's like a chamber for the chambers. So all the chambers kind of belong to that group. So what the chamber does, we organize to advance commercial, industrial, professional interests in the community, economic development. We support the Lakewood business community, and we support the whole business community, not just our members. There are member benefits to being like a paid member of the chamber, but we don't ask if you're a member before we try to help you. You know, we try to help the whole business community. We do educational programming. We do advocacy with City Hall. We offer, through the NOAC programs that I talked about, we offer discounted benefits on things like health insurance, shipping, energy, different programs that we are able to get discounts because we're part of NOAC. So it's like a big organization that gives us a discount. And that saves businesses money. So usually, like if you're an Anthem member, it well pays for your membership dues, the discount that you can get on health insurance. We do networking, marketing, there's marketing opportunities, sponsorship opportunities. We do special events, and partner with a lot of different organizations in the community, including the city, Lakewood Alive, a lot of different nonprofits. During COVID-19, we know that hit a lot of businesses really hard, but it hit the chamber really hard too. We had to kind of regroup. We stopped having live events. We were not able to have our fundraising events. And so while the pandemic was really, really hard on our members, it was hard on us as well. During that time, though, we worked with the city and Lakewood Alive, and we offered resources to our members. We did receive a PPP loan, so I was able to keep working. I was a part-time person that has worked at the chamber for 5 years before I became executive director. So I was familiar with the chamber. I was able to keep that part-time job. We were able to work at home and do a lot of things over Zoom. Informational webinars, in conjunction with the city and Lakewood Alive of presentations, trying to put out information on our website from the SBA and how to get an EIDL loan and which bankers to talk to, and emergency loans and grants, PPP resources, those kind of things. And then helping businesses get back to business, get back to work. What do they need to do? What best practices? So those are the kind of things and resources we focused on trying to help our members and non-members alike during COVID. So different things that the chamber did to kind of help small businesses. We had different promotions that we came up with to kind of help drive traffic to locations, like a lot of the restaurants. We have a very heavy restaurant industry of a lot of them pivoted to takeout. So just trying to put together a support local online business directory where it was, I don't know if you've ever seen an Airtable form where they could go in and put down like, did they have outdoor dining? Did they have only takeout? Did they deliver? Things like that. What hours of operation were they open? So that people could, and we promoted it on social media so people could go in, look at the directory, and be reminded that these small businesses still needed customers, even though no one could go out, we could get takeout. We did a Think Local social media campaign where different businesses told about another business that they were thankful for. Maybe it was a neighbor or a partner or somebody that helped them during the pandemic. We did a Lakewood Masked Shopper social media campaign. And so the Masked Shopper had their appropriate mask on and went into businesses to try to surprise them and say, like, what are you doing to keep safe? What are you doing to social distance? And kind of like tongue-in-cheek, but very seriously remind people that they could get out to business again, and there were safety precautions to be had. So that one was a lot of fun. We kind of ran around the city. I'm not a very good videographer, but we had a good time. We did a lot of free online educational workshops during the pandemic over Zoom, even with breakout rooms so that people could network over Zoom during the break of the presentation. And we even tried networking on Zoom. So we tried to get really creative to try to offer things for our members and non-members to kind of stay connected with the chamber, stay connected with their business community and their customers. So the reason we lost a lot of revenue during COVID is because simply a lot of businesses were in trouble. They were down, their businesses were down, they weren't getting the traffic. Most of our membership, the biggest chunk, I think about 60% of our membership is the small business, sole proprietor. So we're talking 1 to 5 full-time employees. A lot of them, it's just like themselves, their family. So that hits hard. They couldn't pay their dues on time or at all. So we lost about $44,000 in dues revenue, and that kind of fell over 3 fiscal years. Our fiscal year starts in July, so it was like 1920, 2021, and then 21-22. And we still see a little residual of that even now, of people that we've lost touch with, that some people have moved on as far as their, like people have shifted all over that are not in jobs that they used to be. We've lost event revenue. For 2 years, we were not able to have Taste of Lakewood in person. And then all of our luncheons, networking events and luncheons where we not only lost the attendees of the luncheons, but also sponsorship revenue attached with those events and luncheons. And then right now, we are working really hard to collect dues and current past dues. We have some members on the book that like haven't paid in the past couple of years. We're trying so hard to like track them down and find out like what can the chamber do for them? Do they want to be involved with the chamber? You know, we want to work with anybody that wants to work with us. So, and we're at about $12,000 right now of past due. So those numbers, our total amount that we requested is $86,290. And that number, I think, is very, very conservative. I really dug deep into the numbers with my treasurer, Terry Harrison, to really not just ask for, I need, $50,000 or whatever, number it was, but we looked really hard at our numbers to try to quantify what those lost revenues were. So that's why it's kind of a funky amount. So with that being said, the ARPA that we asked for, respectfully, there's a lot of things that the chamber needs to do right now going forward, but offering small business benefits, again, to members and non-members, the advocacy, the networking, providing them relevant business information, being able to continue to offer the member benefits, discounts, marketing opportunities, community visibility, being part of different committees. We have task forces in the chamber where they can be part of, our members or sit on those committees and help us with things like education, task force, membership and marketing, economic development, and then legislative and government affairs. So trying to draw those members in going forward. And then also supporting the community. These dollars would help us like kind of shore up to be able to continue providing things like ribbon cuttings, expanded education seminars, again, networking opportunities, sponsorship opportunities, and all the things that we do. Going forward, like I know of several companies that have said to me, like, we want to be involved with the chamber. We want to be part of the chamber, but we can't afford dues right now. What about dues scholarships? Maybe there's something, I'm not going to, drop anybody from the membership. I would love to have everybody that wants to be involved come be involved. But maybe there's some kind of dues scholarship program that this money could help us fund those membership dues to keep this chamber afloat and help those people stay involved until they can turn things around and pay their dues. Just expanded business resources, and then through a meeting called the Restaurant Roundtable. Everybody, all the restaurants are complaining about how expensive it is to have like Grubhub or Uber Eats. What if there was a way that we could do that as a group, as a Lakewood community? So maybe that would be something going forward that we could work on, some kind of Lakewood Delivers program. So that is it in a nutshell for the COVID relief dollars. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about my other proposal that I put in, the website. But does anybody have any questions right now?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Rader.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I love working with you on the ribbon cuttings and helping businesses get settled here. You mentioned just very briefly economic development, but kind of you kept going. But I know the chamber does a lot with attracting businesses, keeping businesses in Lakewood. Can you just expand on that a little bit, what you do in terms of economic development in Lakewood?
So economic development, right now, we partner with Lakewood Alive. I know that they partner with the city as well to try to keep up with vacant properties. And I know Lakewood Alive is working on that a lot too, but our economic development task force is working on trying to help, where you need a lot of eyes and ears around town to figure out like what's vacant, what's available, what's being used, as Ian is always talking about storage, who's just storing their stuff. And then the other thing that we're hearing from so many of our small members is they can't find help. They are having trouble finding employees. People that take jobs and don't show up, just finding the appropriate mix of employees with the appropriate. So we're looking at working on a job fair to try to match up employers and employees. So those kind of things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I'm kind of thinking too that the chamber could have an online job board. Our website has the ability to do that right now, but it's very archaic. So that's where we are right now. Any other questions?
No, that's it. I think that to me sounds like a big value add, a reason why I would certainly support something like this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, other questions? And is there a second presentation? Just want to make sure we're clear on.
I just have a real quick one that kind of ties in. I also put in an ARPA request for our chamber website and
Okay, so-
rebranding.
And we will touch on that, and I want to give it its due, but just first, any other questions from my colleagues on this presentation? Vice President Keppel.
Thank you, Lauren, for being here in your work. I also wanted to ask you about, I know you do some work with some, you have like a nonprofit roundtable, or do you have some sort of group of nonprofits that meets? Am I making that up, or is that a thing that you do?
So it's been around for a really long time, way before I was ever at the chamber or involved, so I did not start this group, but it's called the PR Roundtable, like Public Relations Roundtable. And the person that was running that has stepped down. So there are a few of us that feel like that is really, really valuable. And basically, it is a group, and it meets once a month at lunchtime, like kind of brown bag your lunch, or sometimes we meet at a restaurant and get together and talk about different community events, like who's doing what fundraisers, who's doing like what dates, who needs what. And so we try to like coordinate. So it's just a way of us all knowing what each other's doing. So because a lot of volunteers, you know how that is, 80-20, 20% of the population does 80% of the volunteering. So that means my volunteers probably volunteer with all the other nonprofits too. So just trying to like spread out the events, spread out the opportunities for volunteering, and just kind of being in the know of what's going on. So I suggested that we call it the nonprofit network instead of the PR roundtable. But so we're working on getting that up and running too. It would be really nice for that group to be able to have an online presence, some kind of maybe Facebook page, if you will, or landing place maybe on the chamber website, or I don't know, to be determined.
Understood. Thank you. Anything else from my colleagues on this first portion?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Briefly, so Lauren, thank you for being here and for your presentation. Acknowledge at least one board member, Jay Carson, in the room, and I've got a feeling Julie Warren may also be heavily involved in the chamber. No, she normally does a lot of stuff. but
Julie's one of our past presidents, actually.
Past presidents, right. There you
She
go.
was on the committee that hired me back for my part-time job some time ago. Yes, Jay Carson is one of my board members. Actually, Ian is on my board. Terry Harrison is here. She is my, I feel like we're attached at the hip. She is the treasurer at the chamber.
Welcome.
And then Mary Bond is here, and she is my right hand on my Taste of Lakewood committee.
Wonderful. Where, I guess is a question for you / the administration. If I'm recalling accurately, I think that Taste of Lakewood was canceled once or twice because of health orders that the city implemented. The city interpreted the health orders as to prohibit us having those community-wide events in at least 2
Correct.
years. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, so I do note the cost estimate there. I don't recall about the indoor events. Were those affected by, I imagine they were, at least in part, during the peak of the COVID health criteria, the limits on gatherings, right?
Exactly, yes.
So was that the full time or part of the time? I mean, we could talk offline, but.
That was pretty much for 2 years, yes.
Okay, so you were not able to do your normal activities during those 2 years to generate the revenue that would normally come from those events?
Exactly,
Okay,
yes.
And the other point, I'll note that Council Vice President Sarah Keppel has more than once talked about the value to businesses, to us, and to, I'm sure others too, but I remember in city meetings of the potential for some kind of online enhanced marketing tools, whether those are apps or web tools. Now I'm going to stop so I don't embarrass myself in front of the extras. But I think one of your proposals overlaps with that. I would certainly be interested in learning more about what the vision could be, and and understanding how costs would work. Maybe it's an app, maybe it's a website and an app. I don't know.
Kind of to be determined.
But I'm interested. In other words, I do welcome the Chamber's thoughts about how to take a walking Main Street community into a digital version of that, because that's exactly what we are, right? We've got so many young people, and the visitors who, in fact, just today, I'm going to have a visitor from out of town. I've sent around a map of Birdtown, where we're going to find a restaurant and enjoy the neighborhood. Literally, I texted a photo of a map, and the businesses that had their map locations on there just got advertised to 24 of my closest friends. So,
Yep.
as an example, thanks.
Yep, fantastic ideas. I think the possibilities are definitely there. And, we want to keep the community walkable, but there are still people who are vulnerable and worried about COVID or being out in public, and I am so impressed with all the small businesses of how they have pivoted during COVID and how they've grown. And some of them, if it weren't for COVID, they wouldn't be where they are now. So, I mean, it's just people's creativity astounds me. It's amazing. So, yeah, I think the sky's the limit as far as being able to connect that with some kind of interactive map or something so you could get the best of both worlds.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We have about 7 minutes from the time we started, and in respect for the 30 minutes given total, for both a brief of the our next proposal and then our questions. So
Okay.
please go ahead.
The next one is short and sweet, so won't take me. So before COVID, the Chamber had put out an RFP to rebrand and update our website because it is just kind of archaic right now, and we could just definitely use a facelift. So then it got put on hold. We didn't have enough funding, and we didn't have, COVID kind of happened and sidestepped us from being able to go to that project. But I have a lot in mind as far as website goes, and we touched on a few of those things with like a Lakewood Delivers program, a community job board, the nonprofit network that we were talking about. We were discussing, wouldn't it be nice if we had a landing page where we had a common community calendar that we could all go on and post our events? Things would be right there. It would be a really good resource for the community, a really good go-to place for businesses, but residents too, all of Lakewood. Being able to post more resources for businesses. Just like I'm imagining okay, go to the website and have links to, okay, this is, step 1, step 2, step 3. What do you do if you come to Lakewood and you want to start a business? Maybe I just signed my lease. Now, I don't know what I don't know. So we get a lot of questions like that of, who should I go see at City Hall? Oh, I need a certificate of occupancy? Okay. But just like kind of a landing page that can like link to all those kind of resources. And then same with the expanded education workshops that we're going to be doing. Like people don't have an accountant. They don't have maybe a marketing person. They don't have all those resources when you're the little sole proprietor. And besides networking, like how can we bring those experts in to talk to them? And they can sign up to go to the education workshop, but then to have those resources available online on the website as well. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how I envision being able to support the business community through an enhanced website. So.
Appreciate that. Pretty cut and dry. New websites and rebranding, some new offerings that you'd be able to do through that revamped website.
Exactly.
Much appreciated. Any quick questions from my colleagues on this one? Vice President Keppel.
Thank you. And thanks, Lauren. With the 25,000, I know you had RFPs before the pandemic. Was most of that for, when we talk about rebranding, we're talking about new design, and how much of that is for web development versus design for just generally for your branding for Chamber? Do you have any sort of roughly, and if you don't know off the top of your head, that's okay too.
I don't know what the breakout is exactly. I could get back to you on that, but I think the rebrand part would be a very small portion of it. I would say maybe 10 to 20%. And the rest would be the website development. And again, I asked for $25,000. I kind of took an average of what our proposals that came in response to RFP. We got about 6 proposals. And again, I think that's conservative. I feel like there's a lot of things that the chamber needs to do as far as like member development and member retention and sponsorship opportunities. But putting our best foot forward, like with a new website, would help us gain some of those other non-dues revenue sources. So that's what I'm hoping to be able to build on.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate your humble requests that are conservative. We did tell people to shoot for the moon, so there's no right answer to how people submit things, but I do appreciate your thoughtfulness and also your attention to the delivery app service that I keep pushing.
I know you're involved with the Restaurant Roundtable. Yeah.
Any other questions, colleagues? Hearing none. Thank you so much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And if anything comes up later that you want me to expand on, feel free to shout out, and I'd be happy to come back or talk one-on-one if anybody has any questions. So Thank you very much.
And this is a good point to note that, we're no strangers to any of the organizations presenting this evening, colleagues, of course, and I'm sure we could all ask as many questions as we can think of between now and our decision-making point to these presenters. I'd encourage that. Next up, we have the Lakewood Public Library.
Mr. President, esteemed members of Lakewood City Council, good evening. My name is James Crawford. I'm the director of the Lakewood Public Library. And on behalf of the library, I am respectfully requesting favorable consideration of the library's application for a grant in the amount of $86,178. This amount would cover the cost of the enhancement and improvement and modernization of the elevator at the Madison Branch Library. And the objectives of this modernization is to improve reliability of the elevator and, more importantly, to improve the safety of the elevator. Safety for both the occupants of the building, occupants of the elevator car, and equally important, the safety of firefighters who may find themselves responding to a building emergency at the Madison Branch Library. This project, this need, was identified after the Madison Branch Library renovation. Plans were approved, bids were received, and then our friends at the city identified for us the need for a more modernized elevator control. This would be the next generation of elevator controls, and again, the purpose, the objective of the modernization would be reliability and safety. All of you have seen the currently being renovated Madison Branch Library. It's a beautiful old building, and it has always served the needs of the residents of the city of Lakewood, especially the residents of the Birdtown neighborhood. The lower level, which was not originally designed for occupancy, but over the years, the library did start occupying the lower level. Currently, there's an auditorium, a children's program room, and a collaborative learning and meeting space. Access to that space in the lower level is by stairwell or by an elevator. And when we think about attendance at the children's programming, so many parents, caregivers, grandparents use strollers. We do have caregivers who use wheelchairs. Also in the auditorium, there are 13 recovery groups who meet there, with over 250 participants at these recovery groups. And the Madison Branch Library is proud to be home, a welcoming home to those people who find themselves attending recovery meetings. Many of those are elderly. They don't use wheelchairs, but it's more convenient for them to use the elevator. This is a fixed cost for this improvement. And I do want to remind the council this was an unexpected expense after the bids were released and work on the renovations began. I also want to mention briefly that the library was affected by the pandemic, as all businesses have been in the city of Lakewood. Expenses for the library increased so the library could remain open and serve patrons during the pandemic. I do want to remind the council that this project directly addresses accessibility, which I know is a priority of the city of Lakewood. It will assist the library in recovering from the negative impact of the pandemic. It also addressed safety. And I do want to remind City Council that the library has been approached by the Lakewood Fire Department. The Lakewood Fire Department would like to use the Madison Branch Library as a training site for the firefighters, given that the library will have the next generation of elevator controls. And we are committed to making the Madison Branch Library available to the Lakewood Fire Department and the firefighters for their training. And Captain Bernie Nypaver did assure that this testing and training is non-destructive, and the fire department wants to work closely with the library in scheduling the training at times that are best for both the library's patrons, and the fire department. So this is a project that's important, it's needed, it's specific, and it would benefit everyone who is served by the library and by the Lakewood Fire Department. And again, I invite council's favorable consideration.
Thank you. This being one of the a few presentations this evening that also has a council member sponsorship behind it. Councilwoman Marks, did you want to ask any initial questions or make any statements?
No, I just would like to comment that the Madison Library is beautiful now, and it's a very welcoming place to be. And certainly having a functioning elevator is very important, especially for those of us who are elderly, of which I am one. So I appreciate you presenting this to us, Mr. Crawford. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Councilman Rader.
I'll note one thing, and I'll have one question. I want to note that I do not believe libraries got ARPA dollars, did they? And they are a public institution, correct?
We are a public institution, that's correct.
And you did not receive money through, like the county received money, cities received money, libraries did not, correct?
No, the library has not.
Right. So in my mind, that not to shortchange any organization that does valuable work for our residents, you know, I just want to note that you're a public institution and tax funded just like we are, and I just want us to take that with additional consideration. when looking at, disbursement of this money. I'll throw this in there, and I'm dead serious. If we rounded this up to $90,000, could you fix the projector at the main branch? That would be fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I want to know. I don't want to take yes for an answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, and just before you go, I just want to make sure no one else has any questions. Pretty cut and dry, but we do appreciate the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Good night.
you. That presentation being more brief than our others have been, we are miraculously getting closer to our scheduled time. So with that, we're going to take a quick break for some dinner as a council and get back to it in about 20 minutes. So let's just say 8:15 is when we'll reconvene. Thank you. Oh, it's on its way. Should we? Okay. Is legal aid here and ready? Then let's get to it, colleagues, if you don't mind. Just in the interest of, we can take a standing break. Yeah, okay. Well, 2 minutes, we'll get started, okay? That's fine. She might be back. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. All right, folks, let's get to it. Apologies for any conversations cut short, but want to keep to task here. Next up, Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Thanks for being here.
Hey, how are you, Mr. Story? It's good to see you. Good evening, Council. My name is Melanie Shakarian. I'm an attorney and Director of Development and Communications at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, and I'm joined by my colleague, Matt. You can introduce yourself.
Good evening. Yeah, Matt Vincel. I'm an attorney at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland in the Housing Practice Group, and I live in Lakewood. Actually, I'm an Onondaga resident.
And class of 90-something at St. Ed's, if I'm not mistaken?
Class of 98, correct.
Thank you. All right, good. We played football together. Go ahead.
So we put forward this proposal specifically because ARPA Treasury guidance does have a special provision for legal aid to prevent eviction or homelessness as an eligible service. So very specifically, this funding is allowable under ARPA. Additionally, there was a joint letter issued from HUD, Treasury, and the Attorney General, specifically calling out use of these federal funds for homelessness prevention services. So I'm going to just provide a little bit of context, the idea of this ripple effect. And you've heard from some of our colleague organizations today who we do work with or would love to work with even more. Lakewood of Alive mentioned potentially a legal aid clinic at their new location. We do take referrals from Lakewood Community Services. And as council considers investing some funds into civil legal aid for the poor, there is this incredible ripple effect on the community. When some funds are invested, so we can reach more families where and when they need help, specifically here with housing legal issues, that brings greater stability, not just to that household's life, but the life of the entire community. And we believe strongly as we move families from poverty to greater engagement in the community, that fosters a stronger and thriving democracy. So related to our democracy, we have 3 branches of government. You, of course, are seated in the legislative branch. We have colleagues here from the executive branch, and then in the judicial branch. So many people know you have a right to an attorney. We all watch, Law and Order, and they read the perpetrator their Miranda rights, and it's true, you have a right to an attorney in the United States in criminal cases. But folks forget we have a bifurcated judicial system. There's the criminal side of our justice system, and then there's the civil side of our justice system. And there are many, many really crucial human rights that are threatened daily on the civil side of our justice system. And there's no comparable right to an attorney on the civil side of our justice system. So statistics over time have highlighted that folks who are proposed for eviction in housing courts across the United States, only between 1% to 2% have access to counsel when their housing is at stake. So this has become a business model for bad actor landlords over time. We at Legal Aid have been doing quite a bit of work to expand eviction prevention in Northeast Ohio. And I'll underscore here our mission. We are here to secure justice, equity, and access to opportunity for and with people. So we very much approach our legal work as a team effort with the clients who we help. And we do this with passionate legal representation and advocacy for systemic change. So to summarize our proposal and the community benefit, which we highlighted, we are uniquely positioned. We are the only nonprofit in Northeast Ohio doing this civil justice work to secure safe and stable housing for folks facing eviction. Renters who cannot afford an attorney are more likely to be evicted when issues occur with a landlord, and then job, education, and other really important issues of dignity are then threatened. So we will use this grant to provide free eviction help for Lakewood residents who have low income. And I'm going to let Matt highlight how we do that work on the balance of this slide.
Sure. So generally the way we do this work is we represent folks in these eviction cases. And as you may know, if you have any familiarity with the eviction process, it moves very quickly. It's like a freight train. A complaint is filed and a date is set for the eviction hearing. And that's the date on which a tenant has an opportunity to defend against the eviction. And if they're not prepared that day, the court will go forward, usually grant the eviction. There's lots of avenues to defend against the eviction or protect tenants from eviction. But if you don't stop that freight train from moving forward, there's often not the opportunity to utilize those. So what we do in our work is utilize the defenses that are available for tenants to try to slow the process down, and then try to utilize the resources like rent assistance, which has become even more available in the course of the past 2 years, to try to maintain the tenancy, keep folks in their homes, or if they're looking to move somewhere else, get them some time so that they can do it without having to live in their cars, live in a shelter, be out on the street. So by intervening in that process, we can, in almost all the cases we intervene, we can slow the process down and give the tenant an opportunity to pursue other avenues.
Thank you, Matt. So ultimately, this free legal help is developing social capital for families with low income. Also, though, it is an opportunity for us to put bad actors on notice. As we've developed and deepened our free eviction help work in the city of Cleveland, we've developed a deeper relationship with their building and housing department. And so we would welcome that opportunity with the administration here to really make sure that safe and stable housing, longer term, is secured. As we highlight in our proposal, we can begin this work immediately. We are a large law firm. Legal Aid has 75 full-time attorneys, and we also have numerous paralegals, client support specialists, social worker staff who can help make sure those connections are made with the other key agencies. We also engage with hundreds of volunteers, and so it's an opportunity to involve the next generation of attorneys in our community, law students who can help us do screenings in court, and we've been developing a deeper relationship with the municipal court, already doing eviction stuffers in summons to help begin educate the community about what their rights are. And again, we are only going to be serving folks who are at 200% of the federal poverty guidelines and below. For a family of 4 right now, that's about $60,000 maximum income household, income. For us in Lakewood, I know we've mentioned the unique needs of our older adult community. This is really important for us at Legal Aid, as we've seen our aging population, the importance of making sure people have representation at this point to keep their home. So this investment in Legal Aid will help tenants secure critical rent assistance funds so we can keep that money in Lakewood. We want to leverage those assistance funds to create longer-term rental agreements for tenants, so fewer people perhaps on month-to-month, but a longer-term lease. That also helps create long-term housing stability. Of course, ensuring people stay housed, but also making sure that's healthy and safe housing. And then also we ultimately want to make sure that rent assistance comes into the pockets of landlords here in Lakewood so they can keep current on their property taxes and make sure that those remain safe and stable housing. So we will create results with this investment. We anticipate we will be able to help 100 to 140 households. Household sizes range from 1 to 5 to 6 during this grant period. And we highlight in our proposal these really specific goals that we will track, and we have an external evaluator who will also measure return on investment, because ultimately we want this to be a sustainable investment. The majority of the budget we have identified and leveraged from other sources: the Healthy Lakewood Foundation, First Federal Lakewood, Cuyahoga County. We want to have the partnership with the city because we want to work with you to look towards long-term stability for growing this program. Simultaneously, we're also in conversations with Shaker Heights. We can have 2 inner-ring suburbs that are making this investment in housing stability work. So perhaps together we can work to get that return on investment from also some county investment. So I think with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and this is something I believe I and maybe other colleagues might have asked about in Lakewood anyway, given what Cleveland has done to fund this endeavor there. I was going to ask if you were seeking funds or this program in other suburbs, and you answered it in Shaker Heights. Any others? Would be curious.
Right now, Shaker Heights issued an invitation to us to counsel them on legislation, as this council body passed last summer. So right now, those are the only 2 suburbs that have actually had discussion about legislation towards a right to counsel. We additionally get CDBG funds from Euclid, Elyria, Lorraine, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting one more municipality, but to expand free eviction help work. So you are not alone in thinking about this as an important issue, but you definitely are at the forefront.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up question is there, I know you asked for a specific amount, is there an actual estimate of what we think the need might be like in Lakewood. And I don't ask that assuming we don't have it. I, of course, know that we have a need for this sort of a thing. I just want to know or understand, have we wrapped our heads around what the faucet would look like for this kind of a program in Lakewood?
Yeah, the numbers are based on the real numbers of historic eviction filings, and we did a look back of about 10 years, total number of evictions. Of course, evictions, because of the eviction moratorium, there was a bit of a dip in 2020. We're back up now to, I think, 350 a year is what the court is seeing. And that's been consistent the last 2 years. But of course, not all of those folks are low income. Who are being evicted. So there's also calculations that we've done, and I highlighted a little bit of this in the proposal to get in deeper. Why we are at the number we were is definitely based on, the current state of evictions in Lakewood.
Okay, and have there been, I'm curious, if there have been talks with the administration at all about the program and how that all might work, and or the Judge Neff's court?
Yes, we have had some conversations with Mr. Story, who's been very helpful in providing us with guidance on how to position this, and also helped us identify where we had some county investment opportunities, which we took advantage of. And then Judge Neff has been terrific because they've been thinking of this both programmatically and financially from their court's perspective. Programmatically, they've been inserting stuffers into the eviction summons and have been able to provide Matt and his team with opportunities for on the docket if we can have all cases at a certain time and efficiencies like that. In addition, they're in the process of applying for an eviction diversion grant to potentially add some staff at the court for some pre-eviction mediation services. So I know that the judge is being very progressive thinking about how to make sure that they're using court resources really well. And this would help honestly leverage some of that too.
Okay, thank you. Taking about 6 or 7 more minutes of time before we break for dinner. Any questions from my colleagues? Vice President Keppel.
Thank you, and thank you for the thoughtful presentation and submission. I had a couple. Why the specific amount in terms of the 200% of the poverty? Why that specific cutoff point?
That is the level of service at legal aid, where we have a line based on some federal dollars that we get. We help folks who are at 200% of the federal poverty guidelines and below. And so that's where that is from.
And then, and how would this funding, the 150 you're requesting in this application, intersect with the almost 150 that you already contracted with the city for? It says 149,054 as a contract with the city of Lakewood.
We don't currently have a contract with the city of Lakewood, so but we do have funds from Cuyahoga County and from Lakewood, Healthy Lakewood Foundation. I think First Federal is not listed on there because we didn't know we got the grant when we submitted the proposal.
I see. Okay, yeah, I reread this. This is leveraged a contract with the city of Lakewood to secure 149,000. So I reread the detail. I guess I need an attorney. And then the last question, this is mostly talking about preventing eviction, right to counsel, that sort of thing. But in here, we were just talking about, in a previous applicant talking about landlord issues and deferred maintenance, as my colleague likes to say. And you mentioned in the economic or in the environmental impact on your application that 82% of households facing eviction have defective housing conditions. And so I just wondered how this might intersect with some of that deferred maintenance with landlords. A lot of I see all the time on our residents that don't know their rights as tenants. They'll post on social media about horrible things and who do they, that their landlord won't fix it and that sort of thing.
No, so that specific number is actually data from an external evaluator in surveying current Cleveland residents. So it's directly speaking to the Cleveland housing stock that low-income people are renting from. But of course, I think it is indicative of housing stock in any other community where we see low-income renters, right? So this is a very important, that environmental aspect is a very important part of our practice, because if we are not holding folks accountable to what your local housing codes are, then we are not doing our job as a community, making our community a healthier and better place. So with expanding our eviction prevention efforts here, our evaluator is going to expand their evaluation into Lakewood, so we can get some really specific Lakewood numbers.
And
Oh, yeah,
if I could just speak to that briefly. An eviction case generally contains two parts. So the first part is the eviction process. The second part is usually a money claim by the landlord, either for past due rent or alleged damage to the property that they say the tenant has done. That will usually present, so when we get involved in a case, we represent the client in both parts of the case. So we're there for the eviction case, but we're also going to be representing them that second part of the case. And part of that representation would be analyzing to determine if there are counterclaims against the landlord. And certainly in lots of those cases, we are raising counterclaims against the landlord for conditions issues that have existed over the course of time, where a tenant may be entitled to recover some damages because they've been living in conditions that are substandard. And we've found that that's a very good way to take landlords to task, because they can't hide. When we're raising counterclaims and conducting depositions, we are going to bring out the evidence of the way that they're treating their tenants. And potentially they're going to be exposed to monetary damages.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Councilman Rader?
I'll make a quick thank you.
Let's go. Rader, Bullock, Baker. Anything over here?
Okay, thank you. I'll keep it brief. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming out. And, we introduced right to council, 2 years ago now? I think it was me and Dan O'Malley. We'd met with the judge, we met the mayor. I think everything was pretty much moving forward, but we had that gap. So I'm happy to hear that you're coming to us now for that gap, so we can implement the program and then maybe hopefully finally institute right to council here in Lakewood. It'd be something that I've been passionate about working towards for a long time. And I think that as a body, we should really strongly consider, although this is technically outside of some of the considerations of having a program that would would potentially take resources beyond the period, in 2026 and beyond. This does envision some city funding going towards this, but I think it's important enough to come out of the general fund at that point if needs be. And certainly in this period of time when people are, as some folks had, Trish Rooney and others had said, folks are not getting the benefits. The Medicaid is going to start rolling people off their books soon, and that's going to be more household expense. Food stamps is going down. All this stuff is hitting all at the same time. Evictions are going up. The eviction moratoriums are all over across the board. I can't see a better use, a more specific sort of use for the ARPA dollars than something like this. So, of course, we got a lot of decisions to make later on, but those are my 2 cents. And I definitely want to encourage us to at least suspend our own rule there that supporting a program that will continue beyond ARPA. But for just that, like Dan Cohen said, budgets are moral documents, and this is something that I think a community like Lakewood should have alongside an ordinance like the one I had mentioned. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We are at 20 minutes, so colleagues, keep your questions brief if you don't mind. I believe Councilman Bullock was, Councilman Baker, go ahead.
Thank you, Melanie. This is really excellent, and I've volunteered on some eviction cases for legal aid in my previous job, and the work you guys do is phenomenal. The question I have is it's kind of dual, but one is I assume this is for 2 years, or how long would the 150 go?
That's based on our annual budget projections right now, based on the number of evictions. We're hoping to, use it even beyond then. I mean, we're trying to be as thoughtful as we can as we've been training up attorneys. We've been making sure our case counts for folks are reasonable, so they're not overworked, but also they're becoming more efficient over time because all of this is coming at us very quickly.
So I guess the question I have is, how do you, and this is, I know how law firms work. You enter an engagement with a client, you bill them per hour.
Mm-hmm.
is that how this will work? You'll bill the city per hour, or is it per case? Or, like, I'd like to understand what the arrangement with the city looks like and how you actually derive the funds. Is it like you get 75 grand a year and then you agree to cover it, or is it a certain amount of cases?
Yeah, it's a cost per case. And our philosophy with this free eviction help work, as Matt highlighted, is full representation, first and second cause. This is not just giving people brief advice or pro se and give them info to go off on their own and do it, right? This is full representation. So there's a cost per case. Excuse me for not having the exact number up here. I think I had put it in the proposal. We do a reimbursement agreement with other municipalities that we work with, especially Cleveland, where we have the highest volume. So it's cost per case. And then long-term for sustainability, and this is, we've talked with Mr. Story about this, and we've talked with others on council. We are so excited to team up with Lakewood and have our external evaluator look at this data and measure the return on investment so we can together go to the county, perhaps with another couple municipalities in Cuyahoga County, to show that return on investment, because ultimately city budgets shouldn't be overburdened by this type of a budget expense. I think it's an important budget expense to have, but longer term, the cost savings is really realized by the county when it comes to health and human services, and honestly making sure property taxes then get paid, right? So it's a city-county partnership, and you're at a unique moment with these ARPA funds to be able to kind of seed it, to move it forward, but then we can work with you, I think, on longer-term sustainability, and it would be very exciting for us.
Yeah, and I imagine it will reduce county expenses for other wraparound services. so,
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Bullock, to close things out.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Melanie Shakarian, thank you for being here, a longtime neighbor in the community. Matt, can you say your last name again?
That's Vincel,
Vincel, V-I-N?
CEO.
CEO, great. And then your personal mobile phone for the record? No, I'm just joking on that. I just want to make sure I had got good notes. So I'm interested in what you're presenting here, and maybe I could meet with you both or more of your team. I know we've got other mutual friends on your board and on your staff privately to understand. I appreciated the model for change that you included on, I think, slide 2. It occurs to me that for some years, Lakewood students in Lakewood Public Schools, there's been some who have had disruptive housing. That's thought one. Thought two is we want to protect and expand, if possible, socioeconomic diversity in Lakewood, which has come under pressure due to the private housing prices, which on one hand is a good thing, but on the other hand, how do we sustain our character of our community, which for generations has been this place where everyone can live and find a good quality of life. So you're the kind of the life cycle of the cases in which you're involved in, touch upon that in a couple different areas. I'd love to kind of deepen my understanding of those impacts.
Yeah, with Lakewood City Schools specifically, first there's federal law that protects children who face homelessness, the McKinney-Vento Act. It allows children to stay in their home for the duration of a school year, even if they experience homelessness. And but still, getting that counsel from a legal aid attorney in that type of a moment is extremely important. And we've worked really closely with Lakewood Schools over time to educate also administrators in the school district on what their obligations are vis-a-vis the rights of children in Lakewood schools. Related to also, I think, the growing refugee population, for instance, in Lakewood. We have a very close partnership with Catholic Charities and the resettlement that they are doing, representing initially folks getting, especially the Afghan refugees who had evacuee status and now are moving into green card, permanent residency, and citizenship status. As we're working with those special populations on those immigration issues, what is coming up is landlord issues and other legal issues related to health and safety. And so, and I think it's important for us to have these protections in place to, again, make sure that we can maintain those residents in Lakewood.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I think that concludes your presentation.
Thank you, Council.
Really appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
With that, we're going to break quickly for dinner, being that the sun has set, I believe. colleagues and council staff, please join us, grab some food. But everybody here is invited to come eat if you're hungry. Please help yourselves. And we'll reconvene at about 8:40. That's 17 minutes, okay? So we'll start our last presentation about 10 minutes late, with apologies.
Thanks for sticking around, too.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah, like their pre-release population goes up. So, with, see how what I mean, like, all of these years
Yeah, well, and one thing I was thinking about Sure. Yeah, so the subsidies are like something that
So one of my questions, say there's some trends, it's going up and down. Part of it is what's the impact of the last 7 years, significant price increase. Maybe that's only hit rent. COVID is a different time window on that, sure. And secondly, are all landlords that problematic, or you're only brought in, are you guys crisis managers? You're showing up with tough cases. Well, you know, right, she's upstream. This town is cottage industry. Also. You like working on the bush garden, right? They're almost without council, little without council. So some homeowners might file an eviction case because there could be some other options. That would be great.
Yeah, we've met. Sorry. It's supposed to be sunny and warm this week, right?
They did win? So, is everybody in the room? All right, ready, colleagues? That's right. We're staying in Ward 3. All right, we're going to reconvene here with our final presentation of the evening. Studio 117, what's the best? Studio West 117, of course. Not to be confused with Studio East 117. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Oh, there you go.
Hi there. Thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Daniel Budish, co-developer of Studio West 117.
And I'm Betsy Figge, the other co-developer.
And so a lot of you know about what we're doing over on the east side of Lakewood to create a build an ecosystem for our greater LGBT community. But really, this is something much bigger than that. We are trying to create a walkable neighborhood for Lakewood, for Greater Cleveland, which really has huge economic development potential for the city, for the region. So if you think of places like the Short North in Columbus, or the Castro District in San Francisco, or Boys Town in Chicago, these are huge economic engines, places that people from locals all the way to people from all the way across the world come to spend time, to get amenities and resources, assistance, as well as spend their time, money, and want to come live, work, and play. And so, you know, it's really much bigger than a single development. We are building what we call and what people have referred to as a 21st century prototype for queer urban development that's creating a really welcoming, friendly, accessible place. Is helping Lakewood in its reputation as a welcoming, affirming environment that supports our LGBT community. We are creating a ton of jobs for the community. We've so far created over 75 great jobs that, again, are very diverse and welcoming, and a lot of low barrier to entry opportunities for employment. We have created a true travel destination in Lakewood already, where just this past weekend we had thousands of people from around the world in Lakewood for a convention that was here. We are working with Destination Cleveland on making Studio West one of the core stops for, where when they bring in conventions and attract folks from around the country, and using that as a huge draw for Lakewood and for Cleveland. We've already been featured in the New York Times for our work and continue to generate press for the city and for the work that we're doing as a super innovative, scalable development for our community. And our personal investment exceeds $6 million in this because it's something that we truly believe in, as something that's incredibly important for our LGBT community and for the city of Lakewood and for Cleveland. It's something that we really wanted to spend our time and resources on as a legacy project that we know will really be able to help just an immeasurable number of people. We have people come up to us every day telling us that they are so glad that their son or daughter has this place for them to go and be themselves and be accepted and be welcome in this environment. So I've kind of gone through a lot of these introductory kind of points, but we are working basically we have done the first phase of the project, which is the field house. I hope if you have not seen it yet, that you come and take a look, because it has everything from restaurants to a demonstration kitchen where we do healthy cooking lessons and other things for the community, farm to table, meal prep for seniors. We have a gymnasium, which provides opportunities for LGBT youth, LGBT seniors, for health and wellness opportunities. We have pickleball and dodgeball, and it's just like a really fun way to kind of get healthy.
And the Healthy Lakewood Foundation just gave us a grant to be able to purchase the remaining equipment we need to become a Silver Sneakers affiliate. So really leaning in on the sense of community and health and wellness for the seniors in the community.
So you can see from this map, these are the investments that we've already made in the area. Again, it's all a very walkable kind of close-knit neighborhood that is really aiming to be the catalyst for development for this part of town. Number one is the field house, which is the first phase, but then numbers 2 and 3 are the second and third major phases, which are the Fantasy and the what was the NTB building, which has now been demolished to make way for this new phase of development. Number 4 is Margie's Closet, which is a thrift store for the trans community, providing amazing opportunities for the trans community to have a safe in-person shopping environment. Number 5 is apartments and retail that we're able to provide affirming spaces for our community. We also have the Edge Artisan Collective, which now has over 35 artists and artisans selling their wares, and they can do that in a much more affordable manner. We have a community garden at number 8 and some other things along the way. So this economic impact study was done for the transformational mixed-use development credit application, which unfortunately we have not yet received, but we might be going in again this next round. But really, this demonstrates the huge amount of impacts to Lakewood and to the region that this project will have. Everything from jobs to retail sales, entertainment sales, and dining sales. And then that directly goes to the projected impacts to the various governments between property tax, income sales tax, and other sales tax. And so we've talked about the field house. And again, please come check it out. And do you want to?
Sure. So we put together this presentation at the request of Dale Miller from Cuyahoga County, as Cuyahoga County is considering an ARPA investment in Studio West 117. And he wanted to see 2 things. So he wanted to see the sources and the uses, which we have laid out for him. But then he also wanted to understand the order in which the funds were invested in the project. And so the sources and the uses up at the top are pretty straightforward for this project. We had some bank and SBA debt. We had the TIF that was monetized through Erie Bank, and then some of the brownfield money that we got from the state of Ohio. We got a $4 million grant. We were able to use some of it on these 3 contiguous projects. And then our equity, we have about $2.25 million of our own money. And down below in the box, we wanted to show from left to right the sequence of how the dollars went into the project. So sponsor equity went for acquisition. So it's very hard to get a bank loan just on something speculative. So we ante up and we always put our money in first. Soft costs like environmental studies, architecture and engineering, again, there isn't always a firm plan to lend against. So this is something that we believe in the project, we believe in the vision and the impacts. So we put in our own money to do all of that. Plus, we were able to tap into some of the brownfield funds in the soft cost phase. And then the holding costs, the taxes and the insurance, utilities, legal and accounting, again, that was just all personal investment. Once we got to the hard construction costs and we had done the feasibility work, we were able to get the SBA financing into the project. The financing costs and then finally the furniture, fixtures, and equipment came in as final money into the project through the monetized TIF. So this was just kind of a waterfall view of what the total project looked like, how the sources related to the uses, and then how we put our investment in first. And then that's how we were able to calculate any gap. So as we move, did I skip a slide? No. So we were talking about, the previous applicant was talking about housing, and we believe that housing and healthcare go hand in hand. And so where the NTB building stood is going to be what we call a flagship development composed of housing, so approximately 120 units of workforce and senior housing. So this is the affordable type of housing that gives Lakewood its character and allows Lakewood to be Lakewood. And in addition to the housing component, we're looking to add a medical campus. And the way that this is shaping up right now, without using any specific names, it could be a collaboration of multiple health systems co-locating and collaborating together on research and education and healthcare, which would be a first in the country. And so we're very anxious to get moving on this. We're able to use some of our brownfield dollars for this, and so we wanted to show you the same type of sources and uses for this project. And this particular piece is both the medical side and the housing. So this is, we're all talking about the NTB site. And a little rough rendering that we had to do for the TMUD application. There's an aerial view, because parking is always important, it always comes up.
And of course, this still has to go through
All the approvals.
What we're trying to do is start the architectural work so we can actually flesh all of these kind of diagrams out and really do the programming, do the community meetings, get all of that started.
And we do have approvals right now. At the beginning of June of 2023, this should be just a flat surface lot in time for Pride in the CLE, and also, are we allowed to say? And also we'll be hosting Taste of Lakewood this year. So parking is always at a premium, and we're really excited to partner with the city and the chamber on that. So at 8:30 at night. So this is our capital stack on the left of the sources and the uses for what we're calling the flagship project. So both housing and the health component of it. And so on the NTB site, we have housing. We're going to be using New Markets tax credits. We'll be able to draw down some of the brownfield equity, a little over $2 million of the $4 million we've already received. There is a healthy amount of senior debt, and we're talking to a couple of funders right now, and we have term sheets for that. We do have a request into the city of Lakewood for some ARPA financing, and we're pursuing PACE financing, as well as an equity raise through some corporations and other nonprofits. And then we do have a funding gap in this project. And that particular funding gap was the topic of conversation with Cuyahoga County. And one of the directives that they gave us was that they would like to understand if the city of Lakewood is willing to support the project, and if so, how much, and then county council will make their decision. So similar to what we did for the field house, we wanted to show you from left to right the water flow of how the funds are going into the project, so that you can see that we put in our own personal financing first. So we put in $1.2 million right off the get-go for the acquisition of the NTB building. And so that was acquisition. The soft costs this is where we are right now. So we're able to use some of the brownfield dollars for the demolition, for the soil remediation, because there were all kinds of contaminants in the soil. But then for the infrastructure portion of the project, we're going to be able to use some of the brownfield funds to actually work with our architect to do some of the programmatic work to define what the project is, the scope of the project, the tenancy, and then how all of the different pieces are related. Do you want to talk a little bit? Am I still good? Good to go? Okay. So we're going to be doing a New Markets tax credit deal on this particular component, and so that will bring in $8 million of equity. And New Markets tax credits is what I do during my day job. So I do this primarily for nonprofit organizations, and I've done about $1 billion worth of these. So I feel confident that we'll be able to net $8 million from that. We'll also, you see as we go along, the New Markets money, would be used for the soft costs, holding costs, legal and accounting. And then when we get to the hard costs, that's where more of your conventional funders are able to step in and to provide some financing. There are certain guidelines.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out, we're about 15 minutes into your 20 minutes, and I want to
Okay.
make sure we have time for
So,
council member questions.
Within the soft cost components, you'll see that's where we have a small funding gap where we're asking for some ARPA support from the City of Lakewood to help us continue to move this project forward. We're one of the few developers in Northeast Ohio that are actually getting some projects done. And it's because we know how to put these different funding sources together. We have great relationships with the banks, and we're also willing to put our own money upfront at risk for the project because we believe in it. And so if we continue through here, this was to demonstrate to Cuyahoga County why the gap needs to be funded as a loan, as a grant versus a loan, just to be able to hit certain debt service coverage ratios. And then the Fantasy Entertainment Complex, which we're all aware of, that is, we have been doing some selective work interiorly with environmental remediation, again, using the brownfield funds. And within this sources and uses, you can see this is about a $25 million investment. And again, looking at that waterfall left to right from the bottom, we put in $1.2 million of our own money to purchase that from the DeFrasia family. We've been able to use some brownfield money for the environmental work. And then again, this is where we are starting to put together the rest of our capital stack to be able to continue to get through construction drawings with our architect. We're using Larson Architects here locally. And again, there's a line item here asking the City of Lakewood to help partner with us on this project to get through this one piece early on that will then unlock the rest of the funding and the term sheets that we have when you get to more bankable phases of the project, when you get into the actual hard costs. And then again, the debt service coverage calculation for the county. And then just a quick note on some of our community partners. We're going to be hosting one of the Cleveland Cavaliers, what do they call it, for the playoffs. We're going to be one of the watch parties for the Cavs. And it's just great having all of these partnerships locally with the Chamber and with the Cavs, and just everything that we can be doing for the City of Lakewood and the City of Cleveland and its residents. And happy to take any questions.
Great. I'll once again defer to Councilmember Marks first, just simply because you're a sponsor on that.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do for Ward 4. You've done a lot, and I appreciate that, your commitment to the City of Lakewood. And I know that you're working hard to get this project finished and do what you can. And I'm so glad that, Betsy, you have the financial mind that you do have. So you're a wonderful asset. I'm happy to see the NTB building come down, and I'm eager to see the housing that will move forward, which is desperately needed in Ward 4. So thank you for all you do and your commitment to the city.
We can't wait.
Any questions, colleagues?
I do, but.
Councilman Rader.
Great. Thank you both for being here again. And I told Dan earlier, absolutely love what you've done. Demonstrated you could actually pull a project off when, we've had other projects struggle in Lakewood. I think that says a lot about you and your ability to, as this is presentation. But I have to ask, this money kind of going in early, and there being, between the two projects, between $7 and $8 million of a gap still. What happens if, heaven forbid, the projects for some reason gets held up? We put in $250,000. Is there some kind of, I just want to get an understanding of exactly what we're paying for and exactly what we're going to get out the back end of it.
Yeah, so this is, thank you, and I appreciate that question. It's a very good one. And, I appreciate that we recognize that, we are able to pull these large projects off, and that, we were able to do so with the field house, which is, it was a one of its kind, first of its kind project that, was is a hospitality project in a time when no hospitality projects were getting done at all. And so, we are very confident that, especially with, take the NTB site, the NTB project, which we're calling Flagship. It is a housing and health clinic project where, the housing is, easily financeable. The health clinic, we will be moving that forward. These funds are to help basically finish the architectural work so that we can finish the programming. We already have kind of lists of program needs from the health clinic partners, but once we can get them on board with signed leases, that is then very very easily financeable. So as soon as we can kind of get utilize these funds to help us kind of finish out this architectural work, that's what Betsy meant when the rest is unlocked, because then we get the leases signed, then we can kind of move forward with basically the project overall. And we have already the rest of, we have term sheets on the senior debt. We have bank conversations that they're reaching out to us because they are very excited to be part of this project. And so as soon as we can get kind of to that, we just need to kind of get to the starting line so we can get to closing.
Can I just, because I know we're running low on time, and I think I understand. So the phased project, and we saw that slide with the 2 phases of the project, this $250,000 is going to help towards the first phase of this project. And then the gap exists, that $5+ million gap exists for the full project, which includes the housing, or am I misunderstanding that? Okay.
So we have a request to the City of Lakewood for $250,000 of ARPA grant dollars for both the Flagship project, which is housing and medical, and the Fantasy project.
Right.
Between the 2 of those projects, the gap is approximately $8 million. Can I say we've been invited by the county to apply?
Yeah,
And we've been invited by Cuyahoga County to apply for ARPA dollars in the amount of $8 million.
Okay, that's important. Thank you for that.
And they've requested, Dale has been out, very supportive of the project, and it's kind of just the order of operations. They want to make sure, they want to see the city's financial involvement in the project, and then they will look at the request and
close the gap.
So just real quick, and I do think this is important. So just separating those 2 projects again, going back to NTB, have the, $5 million-ish gap there, is that right? Or the $2 million gap? Let's take a look at it just real quick. Yeah, 5.5? 5.7.
No, I'm sorry, you're right. 5.7.
So this is for the full project, both phases?
That's for both the housing and the medical.
Okay,
Yes.
got it. So, okay, and so this near-term health clinic is going to be done when? When is the time? What's the timeline for this for phase 1? Just so I'm clear.
Health clinic and housing, all
2026.
2025, 2026.
Okay, that's helpful too. All right, well,
We might do it in 2 phases, but both of them, we've got blue chip tenants on the medical side. We've got great housing stock with huge demand on the residential side. So we might split up the financing, but it's possible that it'll happen at the same time.
And really, the gap comes in because we're trying to do a parking garage as part of this, which the city of Lakewood, and so everybody knows that the parking, garage is really that's not financeable really, and so that is kind of a major component of what creates the gap in this case.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for entertaining me, and I appreciate it. This is great.
No problem.
All right, we are officially over time, so any additional questions, please try to keep them brief. Councilman Bullock.
Mr. Chair, first of all, thank you for the excellent meeting tonight that you have hosted and convened. Secondly, Betsy and Daniel, welcome. And once again, it's not lost on me, Betsy, that you said that your side hustle is this project. You have a full-time job, so I guess we all got to get more ambitious. How many, a couple rapid-fire specifics, how many parking spaces in that garage?
We are looking at hopefully, actually, we have
It's on the massing.
yeah.
190 spaces.
190 spaces, there we go.
Not
Yeah.
small, okay. And this development is mostly or much or partly for affordable housing?
So we are looking to do it as workforce housing.
Okay.
So about, if you look at that like as 120%, 80 to 120% AMI, that's kind of what we're trying to do as what we see as like a major gap in the region's, housing stock, and something that would be very beneficial for the LGBT community, for folks working at Studio West, that's, and for LGBT seniors. As well, and that also enables us, if we are able to do that, which we need kind of this grant funding to be able to keep rents down to that level. That is.
You're trying to keep the cost pressures lower on the rent.
Correct.
I think I recall you explain your financial model, which is laudable and stuck in my mind. So how many, I'm sorry if I'm asking you to repeat yourself. I guess it says here, is it 7 stories, 110 units? Is that what it means, or no?
So right now, we're penciling out about 120.
120
We want to
units.
be able
That's feet,
to
okay, on that.
apply for tax abatement, plus some of our medical tenants are looking to potentially master lease blocks of rooms for patient recovery, or a Ronald McDonald-style housing where friends and family support network can come before, during, and after a medical procedure.
Okay, so the medical clinic is going to be commercial space. You're not going to have residential tenants, but they'll be in the blues in this image
That's right.
here. So that's a very ambitious project, which is
Thank you.
significant. So 120 units might be 150, 160 residents, something like that. Okay, thank you. And then is the county, you might have answered this with Councilman Rader's line of questioning, indicating a match. If Lakewood's in for $1, is there a ratio or any contours to that?
This was the presentation that we shared with the county.
Okay. So, but you were invited by either a county council member or the county government to submit an application of up
Correct.
to $8 million?
$8 million.
Okay. All right, well, that's not a small amount, and, maybe offline we can clearly understand if they're making it a condition of their grant criteria that the city do. I know that can happen on a bunch of different, sometimes the federal government on a highway will require,
Yeah.
not suggest, but require a city match. So I'm curious as to what the criteria are. Thanks.
The only directive that we've been given is the county would like to see the city willing to commit also.
In a meaningful way.
In a meaningful way at the beginning of the project, similar to what they're doing. But they haven't given a ratio.
Okay, okay, that's good to know. And my concluding, it's been our pleasure to support. I know we've supported elements of the
Yes.
total campus or neighborhood before. I think correctly so. It is a very significant project. It's moving. We have a couple of other pending developments which we hope for action, but we're still waiting. It's meaningful that you're getting it done. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Keppel, and then Councilman Baker.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and sticking with us, our last one. So you mentioned with the affordable housing part, the 80 to 120%, would the entire housing, would all the residential units be in that, or you would be using part of the residential units?
Yeah, it really will come down to kind of the capital stack and, what their financing costs are at the end of the day. But our goal is to have all of the units at 120% or below on the AMI. Our goal is also to allocate a good chunk of these units for senior housing. Being able to do so, working with sources that are not, for instance, LIHTC, will provide us with some more flexibility to be able to serve members of the LGBT community in a more direct way.
Thank you.
Councilman Baker.
Thank you. And to my colleagues, LIHTC is low-income tax credits, right?
That's Yes, correct. sorry.
So just, and Betsy and Dan, appreciate all the work you guys are doing. And the question I have, and I think I understand, it's the 25,000 or 250,000 early and soft costs for both sites. The council, previous to my being on it, but supportive, did the TIF for the first phase. Do you envision coming forward? It sounds, you said tax abatement, so I assume that relates to the housing portion. But are you anticipating coming back before us with a TIF for the rest of the site as well?
So we have a TIF that's going to be, it's already been approved on the Fantasy piece. And then with the NTB, it's all on one parcel. So I have to understand kind of how the tax abatement, works on that, on the NTB site. But, there's, I guess we have to.
It's either or, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a choice of either a TIF or tax abatement, we would probably go for the tax abatement to ease the operating side rather than on the development side. We think we can source everything on the capital stack for the development.
Okay, yeah, because I think the tax abatement is automatic if you meet the requirements on the housing side, but then the TIF requires council action. And
Right.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to kind of understand the process. And I remember now that the TIF, when it closed, was for both the field house
Field
and
house
the
and
complex.
Fantasy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, colleagues?
Mr. President, just for a point of clarification,
Leininger.
the tax abatement will only be for residential and limited to that component of the project. So just so everybody's clear.
Can I ask a quick question? Very fast. PACE. What are the plans for PACE? I'd be interested to know.
So, PACE is just another kind of component of the capital stack that right now provides better interest rates than kind of a lot of the traditional debt that we're seeing. And so it's depending on when we get this to financing, will depend on kind of, we can always max out PACE. So if PACE financing is still cheaper than the senior debt piece, we'll max out PACE, and that will go to all of the energy-related improvements. So, like whether it's LED lighting, roof work, windows, that sort of thing.
And we have term sheet on that.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to see it. I'm always just interested to hear what energy improvements and things are being made currently. So thank you for your focus on that.
All right. I think that concludes our questions for this evening. I'm sure we'll follow up, as we often do, with any follow-up questions we have or anything like that. Thank you for coming.
Great, thank you so much.
Have a great evening. And any other questions or business? I just on procedure here, at our next committee meeting devoted to this topic, we'll probably start to hash out some of the ins and outs of how we're going to decide things. We do have some additional proposals received in early April, or did we? All of them? Did we get them all? Okay. Well, at any rate, we will take the next meeting to deliberate, I guess, and start to really hash some of this out. Hopefully, get most or all the way there to at least the $2 million nut we have to crack this year. Okay. Any questions though for my colleagues on that?
We do have one proposal that we deferred. So, Ms. Marks, did you have? I know we talked about some other proposals potentially that we'll present on the 24th. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Great. And then on the Director Leininger, you had mentioned the building situation, just so I'm totally clear on that. You're saying the city will determine its choice of tenant or potential tenant?
Potential buyer.
potential buyer? Okay.
Yeah.
And that'll be this coming week?
Following week.
Okay.
Not this week, the following, yes.
All right, so before we speak on this topic again, we will know that information, hopefully, and be able to make a thoughtful decision that way. Okay, appreciate that. All right, anything else? Hearing nothing, Committee of the Whole is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.